and gentlemen, let's go. We ain't got no time to waste. Let's go. You are now listening to Jason Anderson, and you are in the zone.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Working from the gun, three receivers to the right. Burrow, deep drop, loops to his right. Burrow in trouble. Burrow is sacked at the 21. Could not break away from Frank Clark. Initial pressure from Mike Dana. And Clark has been a sack machine in the postseason.
You're in the zone on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Yeah!
All right, a Tuesday edition of The Zone right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco and Beards. We head up until 2 o'clock. The next 4 hours, we've got you. A lot of stuff to get into today. Tons to talk about. Got some NFL on the docket, college basketball, some Major League Baseball I do want to get into, and some of the things coming out of spring training with some pitchers for the Royals that we can get into with Brady Singer and Brad Keller and Chris Bubich and so on and so on, and then the different position player competitions that are going on with some spots that can still be filled and players on the 40-man roster that would be vying for those final spots. So we'll get into some Major League Baseball today. But Myron Medcalf will be our guest coming up at noon. ESPN College Hoops Insider, presented by the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City. We'll talk with Adam Teicher from ESPN. Will be our guest in the 11 o'clock hour. And we have a lot of stuff to discuss with Adam Teicher with the moves that came down yesterday in that Orlando Brown not receiving the franchise tag and Frank Clark released by the Kansas City Chiefs. And who knows what the next steps are for either of those players, for both of those players, as the franchise tag deadline is today at 3 o'clock around the league. I do not foresee the Chiefs placing the franchise tag on anybody at this point, but I didn't expect them to not place the franchise tag on Orlando Brown either. So we'll find out. I didn't expect him to trade Tyreek Hill last year. So we'll see come April what this month ended up looking like. 2 weeks from today, or excuse me, 1 week from tomorrow. Today is Tuesday, so 1 week from tomorrow is the beginning of the league year where everybody has to be in compliance with the NFL's salary cap and with the Chiefs releasing Frank Clark and not offering the franchise tag to one Orlando Brown. The Chiefs have, according to different places you look at, $17.8, $18 million, $17 to $19 million, something like that, available under the salary cap. I've seen another report that they're sitting at about $24 million under the salary cap by releasing Frank Clark and also not offering the franchise tag. We're not placing the franchise tag on Orlando Brown. So we'll get into all of those things as we progress throughout the show. Josh Brisco is not here in studio with us. Who we've always called Josh Brisco our Charlie Hustle. He is hanging out at Charlie Hustle, so it's just the perfect marriage for you. The nickname, the company, all coming together in a great marriage.
Yeah, I mean, and I barely even had to crack open my closet today to make sure I was going to fit in here too. Like, I'm 2 layers of Charlie Hustle clothing deep today, and I'd have it no other way, Jason, because I'm out here at the store on the plaza, and it is beautiful. It's my first time being in this location here, and just to be able to see all of these designs all together in one spot. I imagine most Kansas Cityans at this point, you probably know your sizes in Charlie Hustle gear, because I certainly have genuinely like half a closet full, and I will leave with more being added to my closet today, because they've got the Kansas City Current KC Hart logo, a ton of the tie-dye ones. They've got all sorts of great stuff in here, including got a little KU North Carolina up on one screen. I see a little CRT TV with a Jurassic Park VHS sitting on the top of it back there in the corner. That one's really calling to me too. And, of course, all weekend at P&L, we'll be shooting T-shirts from a Charlie Hustle T-shirt cannon all weekend long during the Big 12 tournament. And they're launching a new collection of gear this week in preparation for the Big 12 tournament. That has KU basketball player tees for Grady Dick, Jalen Wilson, KJ Adams, Zach Clements, and then you also have K-State basketball player tees now for Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noel, and you can pick those up right here. And also, we've already got a couple of these that have been claimed already, but I'm giving you your final warning, maybe your first and only warning here. If you walk through these doors and you give one of the employees here the secret password 810-LIVE, okay? 810-LIVE.
Write that down.
You get a free T-shirt from Charlie Hustle. First 5 people through the door to give us that password 810-LIVE, and you can get a free Charlie Hustle tee. And if you don't make it under the wire of the first 5, we got a few more things to give away from us here at 810. Plus, again, just an outrageously good selection of some of the best merch you're going to find anywhere in or around Kansas City. The local schools, we got baseball, we got football, we got the current, we got some Monarchs up on the wall as well. I'm really happy to spend about 4 hours here and wondering what my last 30 minutes or so after the show will look like, because I think my arms will be full.
Well, that makes sense, and you can then have a full closet full, a full wardrobe of Charlie Hustle. Now, when you say they'll be launching this new clothing line or these new shirts, will they be literally launching these at the Big 12 tournament in the T-shirt cannon?
That's a great question, Jason. I have not yet had the personal chance to check on the ballistics in this conversation. I do realize now that my learned that, before we all learned that Orlando Brown wasn't being franchise tagged yesterday, my learned might actually still be relevant today if at any point you'd like to take about a minute of the show to learn about the origins of the T-shirt cannon. I didn't even plan that, and that's just a thing that happened this week. I will be asking very nicely if I will be allowed to use the T-shirt cannon from the stage, because that is now the complete goal of my next week.
I love it, and I think they should let you do it. I think you should be able to man the T-shirt cannon for at least a couple of rounds, right? But there's also a technique to it. Like, you don't want to aim directly at somebody, right? You want to make sure that is not the case, because you don't want to get sued by launching a hot dog into the stands.
Exactly. The launch angle, just like in baseball, the launch angle is really important. You're trying to hit that arc appropriately. And I will just make clear one more time, here today at Charlie Hustle down on the plaza, you can just pick up a shirt or a hoodie or some sweatpants, off the rack or off the shelf. I will not throw it at you unless you ask me to, in which case I will. Actually, I will if you ask me.
Yeah. Josh, I want this one. Can you throw it to me while I run to the checkout line?
Yeah.
Just roll it up.
We could run a whole little formation. I can
right.
work on a route tree with you if you'd like. Just get me during a break. We can
on the air.
We can figure this out. That's true, man.
I don't know why it needs to be at a break.
No, it would be great content. I've got the webcam with me too. I can try to turn this thing around and we'll make that work. Yeah, I like that a lot. Absolutely
perfect. Josh Brisco, he is at Charlie Hustle down on the plaza, and again, since Josh, I don't want you to say this because is there a speaker down there where everybody can hear what we're saying right now?
There is. Yeah, there is.
Sorry. I was going to say it very loud.
If you whisper, no one can hear. It's okay.
Yeah, I was going to say it very loud, because then people there wouldn't be able to hear me by saying it loud because they could hear you. But 810-LIVE is the free T-shirts.
810-LIVE is the promo code.
810-LIVE. 810-LIVE.
And that's, I think we're going to have at least one. You can
810-LIVE.
You get to this door soon, but you're going to have to Kool-Aid Man it.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Just bust right in. Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm gonna do.
I'm live.
If you do that in full Andy Reid costume,
810.
I'll buy you a T-shirt, even if you do it in costume. And also, please don't. You know what? Let me go ahead and amend this. Please don't run through any walls here at Charlie Hustle. They've got great walls. I'd hate to see anybody run through them.
Yes, and just bust. I feel like they would not be okay with that person then getting a free T-shirt.
Oh. Sorry, Jason. They're actually asking me to leave, so I think this is over. I'll see you at the studio in about half an hour.
Looking forward to it. As long as you bring a couple of shirts, it's all good in the hood.
I will. Well, I know the password, so.
Are we eligible? What if I drive down there right now? Are we eligible to win if I know the password? I've been told the password.
I think if you get here, yeah. Okay. Put on a fake mustache or something. They're never gonna know.
Groucho Marx mask.
Yes.
Show up like Bobby Valentine in the dugout.
I need eyebrows. I need a mustache. I need a big fake nose. Maybe some little glasses.
That's
the whole nine.
Yes, just right. I'm Humpty Hump. I'll just show up with a huge, big old fake nose. All right, 913-912-4810 is the text line to be a part of the show. 913-912-4810 to text in to join us to talk about different things that we are discussing today. And, of course, we will start, even though there is college basketball going on and will continue going on this week. Now, you're down there at the Plaza. The Plaza?
The
Plaza. It is championship week going on, and live coverage of the Big 12 tournament brought to you by Barstool Sportsbook, Inside Hollywood Casino, Greenlight Dispensary, Jay Rieger and Company, CBD American Shaman, and also Miller Lite. And coming up tonight with championship week going on, Gonzaga versus St. Mary's in the West Coast Conference Championship game, 8 o'clock. That's right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. That follows the Sporting KC show that comes up tonight at 7 o'clock. So championship week rolling. We have 4 different teams that will earn a bid to the tournament. Now, Gonzaga and St. Mary's are already in. So really it's 3 teams that will find out their fate if they are going to make the NCAA tournament. I know there are technically 5 conference championship games going on tonight, but the NEC doesn't matter in a conference championship game because Fairleigh Dickinson has already earned the automatic bid because Merrimack, who they are playing in the championship game tonight, is not eligible to go to the NCAA tournament this year because they are still in the 4-year reclassification window from Division II to Division I. So by virtue of Merrimack winning the semifinal and Fairleigh Dickinson winning the semifinal, Fairleigh Dickinson will be playing Merrimack tonight for a bid that they've already earned. So Fairleigh Dickinson can lose tonight and still have a huge celebration and cut down the nets. Merrimack can win tonight and go, all right, well, see you guys next year. I guess really can't wait to win this NEC and then head to the number 1 seed in the tournament is not eligible. Number 1 seed in their conference tournament not eligible to go to the NCAA tournament. So how Dickinson are they? Fairly.
Yeah,
if they lose tonight, how deserving are they of the NCAA's automatic bid? Fairly.
Yeah, that's crazy. This whole time, I thought Fairleigh Dickinson was the guy the Chiefs were going to take at 31 to replace Orlando Brown.
That's right. Yeah,
I was updating my draft boards, like, oh, Fairleigh Dickinson, man, he's got long arms. You know, he's a little raw as a prospect, more of a right tackle. But could the Chiefs find a use for him at the left side? Fairleigh Dickinson.
How quickly do you think he can acclimate to the NFL? I think he could fairly. I think it's fairly adjust over the course of the season.
He's going to try like the Dickinsons. I mean, that we know that.
Yeah, right. And it's only fairly that you give him a chance.
Exactly.
But no, tonight the Horizon League, 6 o'clock on ESPN. That's NKU taking on Cleveland State. Dennis Gates' old squad, a win tonight, and they will earn a trip to the NCAA tournament. And that's pretty cool. It's a cool story still, even though Dennis Gates is doing what he's doing at Mizzou and apparently not good enough to the SEC coaches to be SEC Coach of the Year. You definitely want to give that to someone, and I'm not even talking about Buzz Williams here, but you definitely want to give that to someone who people are wondering if he should still be the coach at the end of the year at Vanderbilt. He should definitely be Coach of the Year when there's still a question of, do you fire this guy? Coach of the Year. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe the other coaches are trying to save his job. Like, no, you can't fire him if he wins co-coach of the year. But the CAA tonight at 6 o'clock, CBS Sports Network, North Carolina, Wilmington, UNC Wilmington versus Charleston, the winner of that one getting a bid. And then the Summit League, 8 o'clock on ESPN2, North Dakota State and Oral Roberts. That is going on tonight. So there are a number of bids that have already been given. Ohio Valley, the Big South, Missouri Valley with Drake, even though Drake was running the show yesterday, not running the show today, but Drake with a big win on Sunday. The A-Sun, the Sun Belt, the Southern, all already giving out automatic bids. And the interesting part about what we've seen so far in these smaller one big conferences is that every single one has been a 1 or 2 seed that has won the tournament, except Southeast Missouri State, the 5 seed that won in the Ohio Valley. So there has been some chalk that has gone on with some of these. Now, NKU's a 4 seed tonight. North Dakota State's making a run in their tournament. So we might see Gonzaga, St. Mary's. The only upset would be, hey, St. Mary's beat Gonzaga, but, they're still a top 20 team. So we'll see if there's more drama coming up tonight, as there was drama certainly last night in a semifinal game where down by 2, and I can't even remember the team because there's so many games on last night, down by 2, and this team was making a run through the tournament, and they have a 3 in the air, and it goes in and out, and a missed shot, and they lose. And that's one that you probably will think about for maybe the rest of your life if you're that player, that ball hits the inside of the front of the rim, the inside of the back of the rim, bounces up in the air, hits the front of the rim again, and then falls out. Oh, you lose the game. That's the drama now. I mean, that's what we're seeing. And tonight, by the way, tonight and tomorrow are conference championship bids going out. So Horizon CEA Summit and West Coast. Tomorrow will be Southland, the Patriot, and the Big Sky. And after that, there won't be another automatic qualifying championship until the 11th. So we'll have a couple of days of nobody really earning that automatic qualifying bid, the smaller conferences. So tonight and tomorrow, there are 7 more bids that will go out to these, I should say 6 more bids going out to one big bid conferences because West Coast is getting both teams that are playing tonight. So 913-912-4810 is the text line. That's what tonight will look like. Tomorrow, this week, Josh is at Charlie Hustle with some really cool shirts. We'll have those as giveaways at the Big 12 tournament that we'll be hanging out at and broadcasting from. And again, our live coverage of the Big 12 tournament brought to you by Barstool Sportsbook, Inside Hollywood Casino, Greenlight Dispensary, Jay Rieger and Company, CBD American Shaman, and Miller Lite. We'll talk with Adam Teicher coming up at 11 o'clock, Myron Medcalf coming up at noon, Todd Leabo at Sporting KC Media Day later on in the show. Let's take a timeout. We'll come back and we'll talk about what the Chiefs do now. The reaction from Orlando Brown not receiving the franchise tag. Frank Clark was released. That news came out in the 2 o'clock hour yesterday after we were off the air, so we can talk about that as well and some of the decisions now ahead of the Chiefs and Brett Veach in the front office and what they do, continuing to put this team together, that the window is still wide open for a Super Bowl. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. More Zone next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
I've got control of all these knobs over here.
Wow.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco and Beards. Again, championship week. Live coverage of the Big 12 tournament brought to you by Barstool Sportsbook inside Hollywood Casino, Greenlight Dispensary, Jay Rieger and Company, CBD American Shaman, and Miller Lite. Josh Brisco was hanging out at Charlie Hustle on the plaza, getting ready for the Big 12 tournament, and we've got some giveaways. I know the speaker is on out there, but we've got some T-shirts we'll be giving away with a special password. If you say the password to Josh Brisco or somebody around there with 810, the first 5 people will receive a T-shirt, but not right now. Not starting now. When does that start?
The speaker
Tomorrow.
in here is
Okay.
safe. We can stop whispering. It starts at 2 o'clock. That's
No.
not true. It starts
No.
at 11.
Okay,
at
is that
11
real?
o'clock is the actual time.
Okay, 11.
When
11.
the password begins. I was at the password sharing, but we're not Netflix. You know, you're allowed to password share. Just first 5 people who get in here at 11 will be able to get their free Charlie Hustle shirt, and you can just come out and check out all the KU basketball player tees: Grady Dick, Jalen Wilson, KJ Adams, and then the K-State player tees: Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noel. Those are out now. They've launched a new collection of gear this week in preparation for the Big 12 tournament. We're going to be T-shirt cannon launching some Charlie Hustle shirts over the weekend. So it's just a great place to make sure you're all geared up before the tournament. Plus, there's great world champion gear all across the board. I got some KC Current stuff here as well. I'm just excited to hang out here for a while because what they have here at Charlie Hustle is, unsurprisingly and as usual, absolutely killer.
Imagine how upset I am about no Mizzou shirts for the Big 12 tournament. That's ridiculous. Just forgetting
I
all
see
about
Mizzou shirts over there.
Forgetting
I just
all
didn't
about
mention
Mizzou in the
them
Big 12.
because
Just forgetting
they're
all about them
traitors.
playing in the Big 12 tournament. But oh wait,
Exactly.
oh wait, darn it. Oh wait,
Blocking them out.
You know, a lot of people getting forgotten with Mizzou. Coaches, defensive players, Demoy Hodge not even making first team all defense in the SEC, leading the SEC in steals, setting a Missouri record for steals in a season. Can't get all defensive team there. Apparently, you've got other really good coaches in the SEC that are better than what Dennis Gates was able to do. Picked 10th and finished 4th. But whatever, that's fine. Award season, who really cares? Go out and take care of business on the court. Although Kobe Brown, first team all SEC, so that's good. Good for him. 913-912-4810. So, let's hear from Adam Schefter. This was the report late afternoon yesterday as on ESPN talking about the news in releasing Frank Clark and not tagging Orlando Brown.
At the Combine, the Chiefs and the agent for defensive end Frank Clark had some discussions about a rework contract. The two sides were unable to come to an agreement, and therefore, in the coming days, the Chiefs are expected to release the 29-year-old defensive end who is the NFL's 3rd all-time leading sack leader in the postseason. And so there would be one more big free agent. Now, the Chiefs made some news today. They're not tagging their offensive tackle, Orlando Brown. They still would like to bring him back, see if they could work out a deal with him. But they also plan to move on from Frank Clark. So these are some of the fallout scenarios from winning the Super Bowl. When you win a Super Bowl, people get paid. People want more money. And Orlando Brown's going to want to be paid, though it's something to be there in Kansas City protecting Patrick Mahomes. And then Frank Clark, who's been an asset and a force in the postseason, he'll have the chance to test the free agent market as well. And I would imagine there'll be some significant interest in his services.
So I think there's a couple of things there. Adam Schefter saying, this is what happens when you win the Super Bowl, is that people get paid. It's tough to keep people around. There's a difference on Orlando Brown between ability to sign him and willingness to sign him. The Chiefs can sign Orlando Brown. This is not an issue of the Chiefs have won the Super Bowl and they went all in and they've got all these cap issues and situations that they cannot afford to sign Orlando Brown. This is a cap casualty. This is what happens when you win the Super Bowl. You can't keep everybody around. This is not the Chiefs' inability to do that. This is a choice the Chiefs are making to not pay Orlando Brown what is probably, in the Chiefs' eyes, an exorbitant amount of money and more than they feel like he is worth and the value that they feel like he brings to the dollar figure that they would be paying him. They clearly have a set number. They have been pretty disciplined in that over the last couple of years. We see that with Tyreek Hill being traded last year. They had a number for Tyreek Hill, and it didn't work, so they moved on. They had a number for Trent Williams. It didn't work. They moved on. They've had a number for certain players, and if it doesn't work out, they have then moved on and found a plan B, plan C, plan D, whatever that might be. They had a number for Frank Clark. Frank Clark and his representatives did not feel like that was the number they wanted, and so they go their separate ways. And we'll see what happens when they go and test out the free agent market, both Orlando Brown and Frank Clark. But I think that's first and foremost, Josh, is some reaction around the league of, well, you're paying Mahomes all that money, and Chris Jones is going to get a new contract, and you can't keep everybody. And that's what happens. And now Orlando Brown is going to leave, and good luck Chiefs. That, I haven't really seen the good luck Chiefs. That was last year. I think people are once bitten, twice shy on that. But this is a difference, Josh, of the Chiefs are choosing not to pay Orlando Brown the money, not they're stuck between a rock and a hard place and they just can't do it. And they'd love to pay him $22 million. They just can't find a way to fit it under the salary cap.
Yeah, this is not about asset allocation or not. It's not that it's not in the budget. This is a lesson we should all learn at some point. Hopefully, most of us have. Is that there's a difference between being able to afford something and that being a good purchase for you to make.
Right.
And that's why being a Charlie Hustle today is really easy, because it's it's affordable and they're great purchases and they last forever. I'm just a big fan. But really, that is what it comes down to. And having some conversations over the last 20 hours or so since the news broke, I do think that's something that's become even more clear to me, is that we have seen sort of an incongruence of angles given out by some of the insiders of, the Chiefs just want to get a long-term answer now, or they didn't want to deal with the $20 million cap hit this year, or it's too much too long, they don't want to go guaranteed in the future. I mean, we have heard real reporters with real sources say variants of all of those things in these last 20 hours or so. And what I think that ultimately all points back to is the fact of what you just laid out a second ago, is this is a choice the Chiefs made. Now, there are still parts of it that make me deeply uneasy. There are parts of it that don't make me that uneasy, and that's going to be part of the sort of fun of the conversation over the next couple of days. But as we stand here now, absolutely, this is not a case of, they just paid too many people and it finally came back and bit them. I think this is an issue for the Chiefs of just, hey, we could have kept you around on the deal we offered you last year, and this year maybe we'll offer you something similar, but we don't need to do all of this for these next couple of months. We're going to free up our money and try to do something more useful with that. Now, the part that makes me a little gun-shy is that doesn't come with extra draft picks in a trade where you get something in return after you tag him. But if you can't get the market right now, if there's nothing to be gained and you've decided you're ready to move on, I think that would explain how we got here. It doesn't make it my absolute favorite thing in the world, but I do think that what we really do know for sure, like you said, this was a choice the Chiefs are making. This is not their hand being played for them.
My read on this from the market standpoint is that the Chiefs didn't feel like they can get at least a second rounder for him. Because if they felt like they can get a second rounder for him, then you tag him and trade him and get a second rounder, as opposed to you do not tag him, he walks, and you probably more than likely get a third rounder in the formula, because with the number of Chiefs players that it seems like would be leaving with Mecole Hardman and Orlando Brown, and if Frank Clark's representatives feel like they can get more on the open market. And it is interesting, the reaction around Frank Clark. I've been somewhat surprised, and I think this is where, if you're not watching every snap of a player and you're not covering or a fan of that team, that you see somebody released around the league and you go, ooh, start to rub your hands together and like, oh, what should our team go and get him? Frank Clark released, and the reaction from Chiefs analysts, Chiefs fans, seeing the reaction from the NFL of, there's a premier pass rusher now on the market. Who's the premier pass rusher that got on the market yesterday? Was there somebody else? No, it was Frank Clark.
He's the third leading postseason sacker of all time.
That's right.
You just watch him in the playoffs, you would say that's a premier pass rusher.
It's a good lesson to keep in the back of your mind when another team releases somebody, that with Frank Clark being released, he's now moving up these free agent rankings, like top 15 free agent Frank Clark. Frank Clark, now there's a premier edge rusher out there. Hey, teams, you can go get Frank Clark. I think there's a value to bringing in Frank Clark if you're a different team, not the Chiefs, in that he's won a couple of Super Bowls, and he clearly has the leadership. He took George Karlaftis under his wing. I think there is value in that. Where are you at with your team? Do you feel like you're one player away? But if you feel like you are one premier pass rusher away, I wouldn't go the route of Frank Clark. We've seen that. And so that's just a quick little aside of what we're seeing with Frank Clark. But my read on it is that they didn't think they could get Orlando Brown a second rounder. So we don't want to get stuck. If you're Brett Veach and you're sitting there in the front office, that's the office in front of the building. It's not in the back office. But you're sitting there in the front office and you're saying, we can't get a second rounder for him. Do we want to get stuck with the $20 million tag of cap it? If we sign him long term, we wouldn't take $20 million this year. Last year, we weren't planning on 16 and change. But we had to because it went all the way to July. And then we didn't get it done, and we carried that throughout the entire offseason. And maybe that changed a couple of plans along the way. And we don't want to get put in that same position. Either we get something done with him before the tag comes up. We're not on the same page. We're pretty far apart. We've looked around. We don't think we can get as high as a second rounder for him, because other teams may say, we know you're a rock and a hard place, so you're going to have to release him. The value would be you get Orlando Brown and not have to compete with other teams if you were to give up a second rounder for him. But I don't think they just let him walk if they felt like there was a chance they could get better than a third round compensatory pick, that they felt like can get a second or even a first. There's no chance that would have happened with Brett Veach. So they're reading the market on that.
To adjust your math ever so slightly, it's really saying that they don't think they could get a third for him, because any third would be not only this year's third as opposed to a next year, but it would be higher up in the draft order because the compensatory picks get stacked at the end.
Do you think maybe they're part of the formula is, hey, if we trade Orlando Brown for a second rounder, okay. But if we're going to be spending a lot of money in free agency, the formula is we're not going to get multiple comp picks or something along those lines. Do they view it as, say, if we let Orlando Brown walk and he gets a bunch of money somewhere, and then we go and get Davenport and Shark and somebody else and spending money there, that it might result in a couple of comp picks in the formula as opposed to no comp picks but a second rounder? So what's better, like a couple of thirds and a fifth, or a second rounder? I do wonder the math, because they have all of this stuff behind the scenes, right? They know the formula. They know if we sign somebody to this price, here's what the formula should look like. Or if we get a second rounder for Orlando Brown, here's what the formula would look like when we take out the fact that Orlando Brown was going to get $100 and something million in the open market, and what we may pay for, I'm just throwing names out, Davenport and Shark, and just names that have been talked about that are there, and spending money and that formula. Because if you trade Orlando Brown, that no longer counts as a formula, and now you're in the red with all of the money you may be spending there. So it might be multiple compensatory picks versus the one second rounder. I think that might be a possibility.
By losing Thornhill and Hardman, and it just sounds like Thornhill's going to get paid.
Yeah.
I was telling you a week ago, man, imagine how nice it would be if they get Thornhill back on this reason. We might have talked about that when you were gone one day. I can't remember if you were around for.
I don't miss shows.
My real bloviating about how nice it would be to get Thornhill back and then just kind of run it back in the secondary. But all of those guys getting paid, the Chiefs are going to do well in this year's formula, assuming they all end up in other places. But I think what the practical equation ends up being, it's not an equation in the mathematical sense, but I think it's really saying the value between the best pick we could trade Orlando Brown for, whatever that be, I'm leaving it vague because I don't know.
Yeah.
The best pick we could trade Orlando Brown for, the difference between that and his addition to the compensatory formula next year is less than the impact of having our money freed up this free agency.
Yep.
And now that's something where, again, once they cut Frank Clark officially and that money comes off the books, Orlando Brown's number was never on the books, right? We were making space in the conversation that he will add $20 million when he gets tagged. But I think that this does point towards the Chiefs having something they want to do with money in free agency when it opens up. I also wonder if it's at all impacted by where they're at in the Chris Jones negotiations, because if you are right now ready to free up, I'm looking at the cap right now. You could free up $20 million if you wanted to move his money around with an extension. are the Chiefs right now concerned that that's not going to be an option until after the first wave of free agency? And so they say, hey, we're going to let Brown walk instead, and we'll just go ahead and find a way to, we'll keep Chris Jones at his current number while we negotiate that out, and then still stay flexible in free agency by just cutting Clark and letting Brown go. If that's the case, they're not going to have a ton of money, but they would have a little bit because they won't have gotten the Jones deal done if that is in fact where we end up.
The question now, and I think most everybody is asking the same question, is what now? What's the plan now? It made more sense last year when you trade Tyreek Hill to say, okay, what's the plan? All right, well, you can draft a wide receiver. You can go and sign Juju Smith-Schuster. They signed Marquez Valdez-Scantling. There are other players that were on the open market that they go and bring in. And, of course, as I mentioned, a draft pick there at pick number 29 and 30 that, you could spend something there. There were more viable options to where you didn't feel like you were just sort of stuck settling for something and having to just figure out how you get by with a lesser-than player at a pretty important position. There aren't those players that are just like, hey, go get this guy, go get that guy, go draft that guy, because a wide receiver that's drafted at the end of the first round could step in and play, not going to be Tyreek Hill, but step in and play and be a part of the overall wide receiver group. And you signed you can throw 2 or 3 or 4 different players at that to make up for Tyreek Hill. You can't put 3 players at left tackle. It's one guy that's got to play there, and there really isn't somebody that's an obvious, okay, well, Trent Williams is a free agent. Go spend all your money on Trent Williams. There really isn't that guy. Like, there's going to be, some cuts, but so many of those guys are right tackles. And, you'd have to be projecting with some guys like Tyron Smith. He's old, and he's often injured, and they moved him to right tackle, but he was pretty good at left tackle. Okay, but are you going to bring a guy in that's going to play 4 games because he's always injured? Isaiah Wynn, the Patriots are moving on from him for a reason, and he's in his mid-20s. So what's the reason for that? Are you going to bring him in and give him a multi-year deal when the Patriots are like, not good enough for us? Do you draft somebody? Well, if you're drafting somebody, you're probably going to have to trade up to get that. I mean, you're looking at Raiders, Titans, Jets, Patriots, Commanders, Bengals, Eagles, all looking at potentially tackles drafting. Now, they're not all going to draft a tackle, and they're not all, even though their need might be a tackle or an offensive lineman to some degree, they may go elsewhere. But there are a lot of people in front of you that would like tackles. There aren't a whole bunch there in the first round, and there's not an obvious answer in the free agent market.
Yeah. I think, honestly, if you're letting Orlando Brown walk, the obvious option can't really be the option anyway, right? Like, I don't necessarily want the Chiefs to do the obvious thing, if that was even out there, because the quote-unquote obvious thing is probably a lot of money for the established guy. And I know that there's a big difference in I think we've mentioned him like 4 shows in a row now. Seth Kaiser makes a great term in his newsletter. He says, look, the way you get in trouble is by paying good players elite money. And I buy into that philosophy in a big way. It's been kind of the part of the Frank Clark conversation over the last few years, and then in the playoffs he's elite, and nobody cares anymore because nobody should, because he's perfect there. But I don't want to say that paying an elite player elite money is just as bad as paying a good player elite money, because that's not the case. But I think the non-obvious cobbling together of 2 options is seeing what old man on the free agent market you think can come in and can be a bridge guy for you while you draft someone who you don't want to force to start day one. But if they do, you can trust Patrick Mahomes to maybe play with a hand tied behind his back. He played an entire playoff run with an ankle tied up behind his leg. I'm not sure. I
think
lost
that's
the
what
analogy.
You would go with. Yeah, no,
I think that's what it was. It was a high ankle fold. I don't remember. But like that to me ends up having to be the setup. And maybe, you know what, really? Maybe the emergency break of glass option is actually Joe Thuney. We kind of played around with that a little bit yesterday, but let's say they go get, your 41-year-old Jason Peters type, and he's plan A, and then plan B, if your rookie's really not ready, is you could put Joe Thuney out there and life would go on. But really, all of that is just working towards seeing who you take with pick number 31, and that is your guy for the next 5 years. That is no guarantee. Yeah. That is way easier to say than it is to execute. But I think that's got to be the direction they want to head, specifically also because they're going to be paying the next 3/5 of their offensive line pretty soon. Like, those conversations are going to start, both in terms of finding a right tackle, paying paying Trey Smith, paying Creed Humphrey, and Joe Thuney's already the most expensive guard in football still, I believe. So there's a lot of money up there that I don't think the Laramie Tunsil type of thing makes a lot of sense if you don't want to do that even for Orlando Brown when he wouldn't also cost you draft picks.
Mm-hmm. And if you're looking at those dual options, and I think that may be the route they go, is if you get an older guy that could be a placeholder for a younger guy. I don't know where these guys are going to go in the draft, and draft season is going to be so fluid until late April.
It got even crazier yesterday.
Right, absolutely, because. I think the Chiefs certainly would have been in the market for a tackle at number 31, but that would have been a lot of the guys that would have been there that are projected to be right tackles. The left tackles are going to be gone by 31. Let's go ahead and say the left tackles that are good enough to play this year are going to be gone by 31. But there are some projectable guys, and I think Anton Harrison and Broderick Jones, Harrison from Oklahoma, Broderick Jones from Georgia, because Johnson is the Ohio State player, and DeJuan Jones is also Ohio State. Get used to the Joneses. Keep up with them. Keep up with the Joneses when it comes to the draft and the offensive tackles. But both Anton Harrison and Broderick Jones could be available in the mid-20s because they're more projectable. They're more guys that, Broderick Jones, I've seen by one particular person that said a redshirt year would be great for him. If he were to stay in one more year, he could have been a top 10 pick at tackle next year. Anton Harrison, one more year. He could play right away, but another year of seasoning into Oklahoma, he might have been a top 10 pick. Those are guys that are projectable. That do you have to trade up from 31 to 25 or 26 to get that guy while getting an older guy to be a placeholder? Then that might be the path they take. And then you move on and you bring in the guy that would have been a top 10 pick next year. And he's had a year in the system and working with Andy Heck. And maybe he's good enough right away. And that old placeholder then is a swing tackle. Yep. It gives you that option too. But Paris Johnson's not going to be there at 30 or at 31. And he's not going to be there to the point to where you're going to have to trade up to get him. You're not going to have enough capital, in my opinion, to trade up and get him. He's the best pure, if you say just left tackle on the board. Skoronski people like, but I don't think he's a left tackle. And so Johnson would be that guy. There are options there, but it's going to be fascinating, Josh, to see where they go and how they do this. We'll be continuing to talk about that, but a lot of things changed yesterday. A lot of things changed at the drop of a hat with a report that they are not going to franchise tag Orlando Brown. That is still a 3 o'clock deadline today. We'll see what the Baltimore Ravens do with Lamar Jackson. Other players potentially putting the franchise tag on them as well. Also, there might be trades that are out there that might be viable for the Chiefs to look into to solve their offensive tackle and to solve their defensive end. At draft, free agency, they've got some money. They may have more money with Patrick Mahomes. They may have more money with Chris Jones signing an extension. We'll see what they do with the assets they have. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. More Zone next.
Follow the show on Twitter at J810Anderson, at JB Brisco, at Beards McFly, and at Sports Radio 810. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try to progressively make this show a little more unlistenable every day, which is a pretty tall task.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
I will talk with Adam Teicher coming up in the next segment for the next hour. A lot of stuff to talk about with Adam Teicher, continuing the conversation we've been having here the last couple of days, and certainly since the news came out about 1:30 yesterday that the Chiefs were not going to franchise tag Orlando Brown. And then about an hour later, the Chiefs were releasing Frank Clark. So what do they do now? What are the options or chances of either or both returning to the Chiefs and signing positions that will be looked at for the Chiefs? We'll do all that with Adam Teicher in the 11 o'clock hour. Myron Medcalf, college basketball insider. We'll hang out with him in the noon hour as we get
I got breaking news out here as well, by the way, Jason,
Yes.
at Charlie Hustle.
Yes.
Even more shirts to give away with the promo code 810Live. Not promo code, sorry, password. Secret password, 810Live for the Charlie Hustle. Location on the plaza. We got some shirts to give away if you start coming in at 11.
11.
This SportsCenter is brought to you by the University of St. Mary. Take the next step in your career with a University of St. Mary MBA. Join USM for a virtual info session at 6 p.m. on March 16th. Register at stmary.edu/RSVP. With Derek Carr on his way to New Orleans and Geno Smith sticking with the Seattle Seahawks, the quarterback carousel keeps moving as the Jets and Aaron Rodgers have reportedly spoken. Yeah, that's the extent of the news right now, but that's all the news you're going to get from a quarterback on the way out of the darkness. Meanwhile, the Chiefs will reportedly release defensive end Frank Clark, freeing up about $21 million in cap savings and leaving nearly $8 million in dead cap space on the cap after the two sides were reportedly unable to strike a deal. But the big surprise, no franchise tag for Orlando Brown Jr. We'll talk about that coming up next here in The Zone with Adam Teicher of ESPN. I'm Joshua Brisco. This is SportsCenter.
The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Let's talk some Kansas City Chiefs football, some NFL football with Adam Teicher, our Chiefs insider from ESPN. Adam, how are you, sir?
Good, Seren. How you doing? Or Seren. Sorry to insult you that way, Jason. I am sorry to insult you that way. That'll never happen again.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you. Josh Brisco is at Charlie Hustle on the Plaza, and the code being 810 Live. Go there. Starting now. Start at 11 o'clock. 810 Live, and giving away some free T-shirts, some free stuff with the password 810 Live. That's at Charlie Hustle on the Plaza. Go see Josh Brisco. We'll talk with Adam Teicher here, Chiefs insider from ESPN. Do want to pass along a little news that's coming down, and that is the Green Bay Packers have told Aaron Rodgers that he can seek a trade to the New York Jets. And the New York Jets apparently have already been talking with the Packers about a trade for Aaron Rodgers. Adam, welcome into the show. I appreciate you joining us. I have no idea what the next 24 hours are going to be like for the Packers and Jets, but 10 minutes ago, Adam, it was the Packers have allowed Aaron Rodgers to talk with the Jets. Now it's the Jets and Packers have been talking about a trade. This 10 minutes feels a lot like the first 10 minutes of the Tyreek Hill stuff that started breaking last year, right?
Yeah, and then it was like 10 minutes after the first 10 minutes that the trade was done,
and all of a sudden it was done, yeah.
Yeah. By the time we're done with the show, Aaron Rodgers will be playing for the New York Jets. So I promise you that.
Yeah, it feels like that. That was very quick to he's allowed to talk. Okay, they've been talking. All right, so there you go. Now it starts coming out. Maybe the embargo has been lifted by some of the newsbreakers in the industry that maybe have known about this, and it's like, oh, we'll let you know when you can report it, because there's a couple of reports back to back with the 10-minute span. So we'll see what happens with that. But today at 3 o'clock, Adam, the deadline to place the franchise tag on players around the league, and that is no longer a deadline the Chiefs will be looking at least with Orlando Brown. I can't imagine any other player, but at least with Orlando Brown. Yesterday about 1:30, that news comes out. Adam, your reaction to the Chiefs deciding that the path of strategy is not going to be tagging Orlando Brown?
Yeah, that's caught us all by surprise, right? I don't think anybody was really expecting that, but Chiefs wanted to get something done long term, and you still could. They have a week left to get that done, but the prospect is pretty good that they'll have a different left tackle next year. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one turns out, no doubt. I wonder what the Chiefs have up their sleeve. You know, that's the thing. You know that there's a plan here, and there's probably plan A, plan B, and plan C, and can the Chiefs execute any of those to their satisfaction? Can they get done what they want to get done at left tackle, and maybe handle it for the long term?
Why do you think what reasons do you think there are as to why they decided to not even place the franchise tag on him, to see if there was a possibility of signing to a long-term deal? Or there's also been thrown out we'll just tag him and trade him. but you don't just get to press the tag and trade button. Like, you have to have a partner that's willing to give up whatever draft picks you feel like are valuable enough for you to take on that $20 million cap hit if you can't get something worked out. So what are the reasons why do you think the front office felt like this was the best strategy to move forward without placing the franchise tag on Orlando Brown, and kind of the feel of, the Orlando Brown time at left tackle is done in Kansas City?
Yeah. It is interesting the Chiefs didn't go that tag and trade route, which kind of leads me to believe that they didn't think they could get something done, to their satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering what Orlando Brown's market's going to be. I just don't know. This is really interesting to me, this whole situation. Last year he had a different choice. His choice was sign long-term deal with the Chiefs or play with the Chiefs as for 1 year as a franchise player. I mean, it was pretty clear one way or the other. If he was going to play, he was going to play with the Chiefs. This year his choice is, okay, take our long-term offer or you're moving on. And so if you're Orlando Brown, what does that future look like? Can you play left tackle? Can you get the money you want? Are you going to a losing team where you're not going to be successful like you were with the Chiefs? I think Orlando Brown will get an offer, and I think it'll be a good one. Will it be as good as the Chiefs? Will he get to play left tackle? I don't know those things. I think those are things that we'll need to, see as time goes on. But it is going to be interesting to see how this one resolves itself, no doubt.
You're right. The market is going to be fascinating from the standpoint of how many teams are going to be interested in Orlando Brown. I think there's going to be a number of teams interested, and what would they be willing to pay? And when you're talking about a guy who's just simply out there as a free agent, you don't have to give up anything. You don't have to pay twice in a draft pick or anything like that, that you just simply pay him the money. I wonder if he'll get to $23 million per year in an annual average value that isn't sort of juking the stats with the sixth year like we were talking about last year. The Chiefs wanted to pay. They tried to pay Orlando Brown that long-term deal. They couldn't come to a contract agreement with Orlando that he felt like was good enough in guaranteed money. So now it certainly feels like the Chiefs are saying, we don't think you're worth this amount of money. Because, Adam, this is, your colleague at ESPN, Adam Schefter, had the, late afternoon yesterday and said, talking about Frank Clark being released and Orlando Brown, no tag, and said, well, this is what happens when you win the Super Bowl, is guys are going to want to get paid, which is true, but that's not necessarily the issue here with Orlando Brown. This is not an inability for the Chiefs to be able to sign Orlando Brown. This is a cost value decision by the Chiefs of, we feel like your value is this, and we're not going to budge on what we think your value is. We're not going to overpay for that because you feel like your value is that. They can sign Orlando Brown. This is simply a decision in-house of cost, value, and return on investment.
Yeah, and they could have signed Tyreek Hill last year had they wanted to go there.
True, yeah.
But they decided, what, we're better off with the cap room and the extra draft picks, and this time they're not going to get really any compensation. I mean, they may get a third-round pick next year out of the deal, possibly, but this is what that's about, and it's clear. You count the $20 million that the Chiefs will not have to count against their cap with Orlando Brown not being the franchise player, and the $21 million that they saved from Frank Clark now that they're going to, when they release him, that's $41 million they have to play with now that they wouldn't have had otherwise had they kept Clark at his current deal and had they tagged Orlando Brown. So, I think it's clear that they weren't going to keep Frank Clark on his current contract. I mean, I think we all kind of knew that as the season wound down that he was going to have to take another restructure or pay cut like he did last year. But so there's a lot going on here. I mean, there's a lot the Chiefs can do with that cap room, and that they suddenly have now. And it looks like they're going to get 12 draft picks, not as good as last year when they had 10. I mean, they had 2 in the first, 2 in the second. This year they only have 1 in the first, second, and third. So it's not as good as last year. But the way they drafted toward the end of the draft last year leads you to believe the Chiefs could still find some good players with some of those late round picks. Plus, this gives them the flexibility to move around, move up if they want to. So, a lot going on right now for the Chiefs. They have a pretty good cap situation and a pretty good draft situation as well.
Yeah, I'll go one step further when you say look at the Chiefs' salary cap that they have right now and some of the money they have under the cap, and there are different ways that they can even save more money and be bigger players in free agency if they wanted to go that route. But the $20 million for Orlando Brown, it's a $7 million dead cap hit for Frank Clark. Could have been 28 if they kept him around. I'll throw one more in there. Tyreek Hill's cap number is $31 million for the Miami Dolphins this year. So you're talking about $51 million with Orlando Brown and Tyreek Hill. If they don't go the route last year of trading Tyreek Hill. And I think that's part of where the Chiefs are saying we are not, as long as they have Patrick Mahomes, you're not going to pay elite money for a good player. You'll pay elite money for an elite player, but they're not going to pay elite money for a good player.
Yeah. And it comes down to, hey, can we win a Super Bowl without this guy? And they were right.
They were right last year.
When they said we can win a Super Bowl. Exactly. It was kind of funny 2 years ago when Eric Fisher was hurt and they cut Eric Fisher and they needed a left tackle. I mean, they were, I don't want to say desperate for a left tackle, but they were really aggressive, with the Trent Williams stuff, and then even with Orlando Brown making that trade. And I'm wondering what that strategy is going to be this year. How aggressive are they going to be? What's on the table here? But there's a bunch of options out there. Some of them might be better than others, but I'm interested to see how the Chiefs handle this. No doubt.
A part of me wonders if Brett Veach and those in the front office and talking with Orlando Brown's, representative, if they essentially said, this is what we think you're worth, and if you feel like you're worth more, then feel free. And they may even have an idea of, we don't think he's going to get that. And if you want to come back around and play ball and talk with us about, what we're offering you, then that's still available of the contract we're offering you. But feel free to go and test the market. That strategy, while I think each individual team in a vacuum may not view Orlando Brown as a $22, $23 million per year player, I think if you are in a position to where you say, we got to have a left tackle and we're bidding against some other teams that he's visiting in free agency, then it might take that to sign him. So I do wonder what he's going to sign for versus what his value is on an actual team, because since yesterday when the Chiefs did not tag Orlando Brown, a friend who's a Bears fan, a friend who's a Jets fan, a friend who's a Titans fan, have all reached out and okay, what's going on with Orlando Brown? Because they're talking about their team going and signing Orlando Brown. And those are teams that certainly would be in the market for Orlando Brown. If you got two or three that are bidding, then Orlando Brown feels like he probably can get that money from those teams. But what are you going to have in return? You get the money as a left tackle, but you might be like Tyreek Hill watching the Chiefs play in the Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl while, you're at home on the couch doing that. And you get Andy Reid with I don't know if he meant any ill will on his conversation or a comment about Tyreek Hill when asked about, what he was able to do, and said, well, he got a lot of money and a lot of receptions this year. So there you go. That's what he did. That is correct. So I do wonder what the market's going to be with the number of teams if they are interested versus what the Chiefs specifically in a vacuum feel like he is actually worth, monetary value-wise.
And some of these teams have a ton of cap room. I mean, the Bears have, just an obscene amount of cap room burning a hole in their pocket there. They can afford to overpay for Orlando Brown if that's what they want to do. So, I do feel like he'll end up getting something pretty good. Will teams want him as a left tackle? I mean, that's another question. And what's he worth if you don't see him as that? So it is an interesting situation, and it's different from last year because one way or the other, you knew at this time that he was going to play for the Chiefs. Now he's going to be moving on, and other than maybe the contract, he's gotten everything he's wanted by coming here. He's gotten to play left tackle. He got to win a championship, and you're going to go to the Bears and play right tackle and lose for 10 years. I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't think the Bears will be bad for the next 10 years, but they've been bad most of the last 10 years, right? So it certainly is possible, and you're rolling the dice a little bit in that. And Despite what that NFLPA survey might have said, I think there's a lot of value in playing for the Chiefs right now.
Yeah, no, I'm with you with that. And the Bears have just under $100 million in cap space, so they would have the money to go out and be major players on the free agent market. Visiting with Adam Teicher from ESPN. The question now that people have after yesterday and the initial reaction, what now? What do you think are the options for the Chiefs to fill what is a pretty big, figuratively and literal, void on that left tackle spot for the Chiefs?
Yeah, well, there's some options. I mean, they can move around in the draft and find somebody. I know they felt like 2 years ago they were going to be in no man's land, that if they'd stuck with that pick at the end of the first round, the one they ended up sending to Baltimore for Orlando Brown, they were kind of in no man's land for a tackle. I'm not sure that's going to be the case, but even if it is, they certainly have more ammunition this year to move up if that's what they want to do. I mean, Laramie Tunsil's headed into the last year of his contract. Does Houston want to pay him? And would they be willing to trade him? And the Chiefs can give him Tunsil a new contract. And then certainly there's some guys in free agency, probably not of Orlando Brown quality, but maybe the Chiefs don't have to solve this problem for the long term this year. Maybe they can find an adequate 1 year fix to this and then go back at it again next year. And, there's also the Joe Thuney thing. He did play that one game at left tackle. I don't know that that's a long-term solution. I'm quite sure that wouldn't be the Chiefs' plan A in this thing here. But, they do have that in their back pocket. He's certainly getting paid like a left tackle, right? So, that's something the Chiefs could also do. Although, again, I'm not sure that would be their first preference.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And just – I mean, when Orlando Brown hadn't showed up to camp last year for, like the 2 days that he had missed, Andy Reid said that, Joe Thuney can play left tackle in a heartbeat, right? I mean, it was – now, I don't know that is specifically the option that they want to go with. Like you said, I don't think that's the long-term deal, but he definitely is paid like a left tackle there. I wonder if there's an element of, like, there's no one answer, like there's no one specific player that's going to then fill in for that left tackle spot. Like the strategy might be you go find a veteran guy that's been out there and may not be, it's not Trent Williams, right? It's not a player of that caliber. And then you may move around the draft and find somebody at tackle and trade up. And it gives you an option of, if that guy is good enough to play right away, then great, you've got him. If not, maybe it takes a year of seasoning, and then he slides and plays the left tackle starting next year. And you might have an idea of what you have on your hands. I wonder if there's a strategy of one particular player, you go and make a trade to bring that guy in, you make a free agent signing, or you spend some draft picks and trade up really high in the draft and take one guy, or if it's sort of a meshing of those strategies.
Yeah, well, that's the great thing about coming up with $41 million in cap space all of a sudden, is you have the ability to do that if that's what you want to do. You've got the draft picks. It looks like you're going to get 12 of them. And again, a lot of them aren't great picks, but they still give the Chiefs the ability to move around and maybe trade up if that's what they want to do in a given round. And then there's, they've got some cash to spend on a veteran if that's the way they want to go. So, I mean, that is certainly an option for the Chiefs, and one that's reasonable. I mean, that's not a pie in the sky kind of thing. I mean, they certainly could accomplish that goal if that's the way they decide to go.
Yeah, and you wonder if they if they look at it and say there's somebody there at like number 15 that shouldn't be there, and this guy is a franchise left tackle, and we would have it solved for the next 5 years or 6 years or whatever it might be at left tackle. All right, we're trading number 30 in next year's first. So next year's 30, 31, or 32 to be able to go up there and figure out we've got our left tackle now for the next 5 years. And yeah, it's not ideal to do that. You'd love to just be able to draft that, but it's worth it. They traded that to move up to get Trent McDuffie, not next year's first, but they traded a couple of picks, first and a third, to go up and get Trent McDuffie to move up. Would it be worth that if they say this is a left tackle for the next 5 years? They felt like that with the defensive end. They felt like that with Patrick Mahomes, and I'm not sure that there's a tackle out there that would be close to where the Chiefs could trade up to. That would be, your left tackle that you plug and place, and Rashawn Slater, and it's like, okay, good, he's there, and you don't have to worry about that anymore as long as he's healthy. I don't know if there's somebody close enough to where the Chiefs could even trade up to do that. Not sure, but I think that certainly could be a part of the strategy. Last one, and then we'll take a timeout. Is there a chance he returns? Do you think there's a chance that a week from now, Orlando Brown and his representative have been going through the legal negotiating period, which would start 6 days from now, that maybe they are reading the tea leaves and he re-signs with the Chiefs?
Yeah, I don't think so, but again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. Orlando Brown has gotten a lot, or just about all of what he's wanted from this trade to the Chiefs. I mean, he's playing on a winning team. He got to play a preferred position. And at some point it's going to, they've got to make up their mind. He and his agents, hey, what can we realistically think we're going to get on the market, and is it going to be as a right tackle or left tackle, and what's the team going to be? Are we going to lose for the next 5 years over the life of this contract? And he's a guy who's a little bit different. I mean, I don't want to say that money's not important to him. It is, but I think he's more concerned, Orlando Brown is, more than most people, maybe with his legacy and what he leaves behind when his career is over. And it's easier right now to see that he's going to have that legacy if he plays for the Chiefs than with the Chicago Bears or the Arizona Cardinals or some team like that. Now, that doesn't mean he wouldn't make the move. I'm not suggesting that, but I don't think this is going to be a slam dunk for him. But to answer your initial question, I'm not expecting him to be back. No,
me either. And maybe part of his legacy he views as being the highest paid left tackle that's out there. I don't know if that's part of it. It might be. And I don't begrudge him.
It's not a bad thing to leave behind.
No,
if that's what you do.
Not at all. And I don't begrudge him to go and get money. Go and get as much money as you can.
No, I don't either.
And the Chiefs have to make their decisions too. So Tyreek Hill, go get as much money as you can. Chiefs have to make a decision, and they made it work. Orlando Brown, you feel like you're worth that much money? Great. Go get it. And the Chiefs have to make a decision and figure out how to make it work. And now it's up to the front office and Brett Veach to see what they can do to try to fill that void at left tackle that's there. Whether people think he was good, bad, great, either way, you got to find somebody to play left tackle now. Adam Teicher is our guest from ESPN. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll talk about some other moves for the Chiefs. Free agency is 8 days away from, or at least the league year starting. We'll see if the Chiefs would be interested in some different positions. And Frank Clark is released. We'll talk to Adam Teicher about that coming up in the next segment. More Zone right after this.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com, in the 810 mobile app, or by subscribing to The Zone wherever you get your podcasts. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
They've been firm up front.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, hanging out on the Tuesday edition of The Zone. Jason Anderson with you. Josh Brisco, Beards. We head up until 2 o'clock. We'll talk with Myron Medcalf from ESPN coming up at noon. College Hoops Insider. Some automatic bids going out tonight with some one-bid leagues and tomorrow night as well. Right now talking some Kansas City Chiefs football. It's NFL football with Adam Teicher from ESPN. All right, Adam, Frank Clark released yesterday. Not really surprising, but you know, what was your reaction to the news that the Chiefs will not work out, restructure, or didn't come to an agreement to do that with his representatives?
Yeah, you know, not surprising. I mean, we all knew this was a possibility, but I thought there might be a glimmer of hope just because he did the same thing last year. He took the Chiefs deal last year, and so I thought that maybe he was in a mood to do that again this year. You know, I didn't think he would come back last year. So, you know, from that aspect, a little surprising, but no, not, you know, we all knew this certainly could happen. So you're right, not that surprising, but now the Chiefs have some work to do there too.
Do you think he can return to the Chiefs? Or let me ask you this, do you think there's a better possibility, a better percentage chance of Frank Clark re-signing than Orlando Brown?
Yeah, probably. I would say maybe slightly. I don't think there's a great chance maybe for either one, but we'll see. You know, you never say no till it's over, but the Chiefs are going to have to find somebody in that spot. So if it's not Frank Clark, they're going to have to do something. So, yeah, I could see that happening, but I wouldn't predict it either.
Yeah, I just wonder, you know, sometimes the motivation of players of like, okay, so if the Chiefs sat down and did want to restructure the deal and wanted to keep Frank Clark at a certain price, and they decide to go their separate ways, then obviously Frank Clark and his representatives felt like he was more valuable than that. You know, I have no idea what he's going to get on the open market. Is he going to get a multi-year deal from a team, you know, being a 30-year-old now? And if you look at his, you know, teams aren't going to be like fans of teams that go, oh, Frank Clark is out there. Now we have a premier pass rusher we can go and bring into this team. I don't think front offices are going to view it that way. I think they'll understand what Frank Clark brings to the table, the bigger picture, the grand scheme. And if a team is one, you know, stud edge rusher away from being a Super Bowl contender, Frank Clark is not the guy that they're going to go out and sign. So, you know, does he get a multi-year deal? Or is it a one-year deal somewhere else for, let's say it's even $3 million more than what the Chiefs are offering him? $3 million is a whole heck of a lot of money, okay? So I am not saying that Frank Clark should turn down $3 million. But sort of the motivation of, you know, he's made $80 million the last 4 years. Is it worth making $3 more million to then uproot your family and move somewhere else for a year, as opposed to staying and trying to win another Super Bowl, being a part of this group and wanting to be a part of the Chiefs, things like that? Is it worth that lesser money for somebody that's already made more money than his kids and grandkids and families taken care of and all of that stuff? I have no idea. Everybody has their different views. So, you know, maybe from that standpoint, it might be worth it. Maybe he still has a house here and his family and you know, kids stay here and keep going to the same schools, and he just, you know, travels during the football season. Who knows what happens with that? But it's always interesting, like you get to the end of your career or you get to a point to where you wonder, are there 2 or 3 year deals ahead of you? And if not, is it worth it? Especially if you've made as much money as he had in his career. But we'll find out. So.
Yeah, I don't know where he's going to end up either, and how it's going to work out for him. You know, he may be one of those guys who takes a 1 year kind of a prove it deal, you know, with somebody, and has to have a big year if he's going to get another big contract. It's you know, I'm not sure where it's going to go for Frank Clark right now. It's hard to predict at this point, but you know, you're right. I mean, at some point the Chiefs wanted him back, and at some number, and you know, you feel like maybe he knew something, or he just felt like, okay, I can do better than this out there, than what the Chiefs were offering. So we'll see if he's right or not.
How do they find the replacement there for Frank Clark? Dunlap is a free agent. Frank Clark is now a free agent. They've got Karlaftis. Is it draft? Is it free agency? They've got money certainly to spend. What do you think the Chiefs may do as this next week will give us a pretty good indication of what part of the strategy would be?
Yeah, they got Mike Dana too, and Mike Dana's a pretty good player as well. But they need more than that. That's not enough. So I can see them, going back to that defensive end well in the first round. I really could. I could see the Chiefs drafting a pass rusher at the end of the first round if there's one who matches up with what they think is a good fit for them and good value. So that's certainly a spot to keep an eye on. Wide receiver, maybe another one, I think, depending on what happens in free agency. But those are two spots I have my eye on, no doubt.
Yep, visiting with Adam Teicher. If Frank Clark's career is over in Kansas City, he played with the Chiefs for 4 years, went to 3 Super Bowls, was a big part of winning 2 of those Super Bowls. Is he a guy whose name will be up on the facade up there at the Arrowhead Stadium as in the Ring of Honor for the Chiefs? And can somebody be up there that only played 4 years, even if it feels like the impact was as great as Frank Clark's was in the grand scheme, and especially from a playoff perspective, and helping a team win 2 Super Bowls?
Yeah, well, I think there are guys in the Chiefs Ring of Honor who have had less impact than Frank Clark had during his time here. So, if that's your standard, then he should probably get in. But there's going to be a lot of guys from this era who are going to get in.
Yeah. And
there's going to be some good players who aren't, and I just don't know 4 years. I don't know that he had that kind of impact. Certainly had some big moments and some great particularly in the playoffs. But I don't know that there was enough of an impact when he was playing for the Chiefs. He played in some great teams. I guess you could probably argue, did they win the Super Bowl either of those years without him? I liked Frank Clark, thought he was a good player for the Chiefs for the most part, but I just don't know there was that kind of impact. Yeah. I would not do that, given the fact that all these other guys who are going to from this era who are going to have to go in. I just don't know that he will or deserves to.
Visiting with Adam Teicher, before we move on to a couple of thoughts on a wide receiver, and then get you out of here. They decided, as we talked about, they didn't put the franchise tag on Orlando Brown. That would have been a $20 million cap hit right now. Boom, on the books, franchise them, there it is. And by next Wednesday, you've got to be compliant with the NFL and under the salary cap. So as we look at Patrick Mahomes and a cap hit this year of $49 million, Chris Jones cap hit 28.3, Tyreek Hill $31 million with the Dolphins, Orlando Brown, whatever that would have been. Keeping Frank Clark on the team at the current deal. I bring all of those up because I ask, right now as it stands with the Chiefs moving forward after winning 2 Super Bowls in 4 years and being able to do that with an expensive quarterback, do they have a bad contract on their books right now? Because Frank Clark, the last couple of years, you would immediately go, Frank Clark. That's an albatross. He's not doing what you're paying him for. That's a bad deal. That's a bad contract. Or, could look at some others. But looking at him right now, is there a bad, an albatross to where you're going, wow, the Chiefs are carrying that and they've just got to take their medicine?
Yeah, no, not certainly. They used to have. I feel like they always had a few of those, back in the day. Even guys who might have been pretty good players, they just weren't living up to that contract. But no, Frank Clark would have been the one, and I guess that's debatable. They won 2 Super Bowls with the guy. They probably got their money's worth out of him, but still, I don't think so. I think they've done such a nice job of knowing when to say when. They've just done a great job, and I'm wondering if that's going to change this year with Chris Jones, and not in terms of that's going to be a bad contract, but maybe they're going to give until it hurts because they feel like that's a guy they have to have. But the Chiefs have gotten to all these players. They've gotten to a point and said, "This is what we think you're worth. We're not. This is the line in the sand. We're not going beyond this." And they've done a really good job with that. So you have to say that so far that strategy has paid off for the Chiefs. I'm not saying it will forever or in every case, but you really like what they've done so far.
Visiting with Adam Teicher from ESPN. Clyde Edwards-Helaire still under contract, not a free agent, has one more year left on his deal. If they were to trade him, they could save $2 million on the cap this year. And report from one of your colleagues was that teams have been inquiring or at least talking about Clyde Edwards-Helaire as maybe a player they could trade for. Chiefs are not actively shopping him, but more of a will listen if called. Do you think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is on the Chiefs next year?
No, I don't. If somebody's going to give the Chiefs something good or reasonable for him, why would you keep him? This is probably going to be his last year here. Isaiah Pacheco is everything that the Chiefs hoped Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be. I just don't see a role for him anymore. You throw in the fact that in any of his 3 seasons he has not been able to stay healthy. Maybe that's just bad luck or whatever, but it's the fact, and you just don't know that you can count on him. So I just don't see it. I think if the Chiefs can get something good for him, I would take it. Then they have maybe a little work to do on their depth at running back, but that's fine. I'm okay with that. I'll live with that. But as far as turning down a reasonable trade offer for him, I don't think that's a good thing for the Chiefs to do.
What about Juju Smith-Schuster? Do you think the Chiefs will be willing to pay what may be a market value of a multi-year deal for Juju if he went out and earned that in a 1-year prove-it deal? Do you think the Chiefs would be willing to give Juju a multi-year deal with at least a concern about the knees? He played 16 games out of 20, or excuse me, he played 19 games out of 20, only missed 1. So do you think they'd be willing to give Juju Smith-Schuster a multi-year deal if that's ultimately what he looks for?
Well, I think they would, but again, will it meet his asking price?
Mm-hmm.
Is it something that he wants to do? And, I don't feel like with him it would be any different than it would be with Orlando Brown or Tyreek Hill or Frank Clark. I mean, we have our price here, and this is as far as we're going to go. And, I think it would be a good thing for the Chiefs to do to explore that. But you're right, there's some injury concerns there. And but I think it's worth looking into for the Chiefs, no doubt.
Do you think they will would you look into releasing Marquez Valdes-Scantling and saving $7 million? Or the value for him at 11 with this wide receiver market is good value for what he brings, and when you release him, you have to find somebody else to go and fill in that spot.
Yeah, maybe without this $41 million savings we've been talking about, then that's something you have to consider. But now I don't think so. I would keep him, particularly with all the uncertainty with Juju and with Mecole Hardman. Mm-hmm. I'm not ready to go into a regular season with Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore as your top 2 receivers. And I'm sure the Chiefs would do something there to add to that, of course, whether it's the draft or the free agency or both. But I'm not ready to go there right now, not over $7 million. So I would keep him. Yeah.
We'll see what ends up happening. Adam Teicher from ESPN, our guest. Adam, you're the man. Really appreciate the time. And next time we talk, who knows what the conversation will be about. Certainly didn't think we'd be discussing Orlando Brown not being franchise tagged. So we'll see what happens next. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it, man.
All right, good stuff, Jason. Talk to you next week.
Absolutely. There's Adam Teicher. And, yeah, who knows? I mean, what a difference a week makes. This time last week it was, well, yes, of course the Chiefs are going to franchise tag Orlando Brown because you'll just sign him to a long-term deal or you trade him. You don't want to just let him walk and then take the formula for a comp pick, But not the case. So we'll find out what happens over the next week or so. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. Josh Brisco hanging out at Charlie Hustle in the Plaza. We'll hear from Myron Medcalf at noon. Todd Leabo is hanging out at Sporting KC Media Day. We'll hear from Todd Leabo as we continue rolling along on this Tuesday edition of The Zone, Sports Radio 810 WHB.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Don't dab babies, okay?
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Thank you, Adam Teicher. Hang out with Myron Medcalf coming up at noon. ESPN College Hoops Insider, presented by the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City. Todd Leabo, Sporting KC Media Day coming up later on in the show. Josh Brisco hanging out at the Plaza at Charlie Hustle. Josh, what's going on down there?
It's a beautiful place to be, Jason. It's a beautiful place to come visit ahead of the Big 12 tournament. They've launched a new collection of gear this week, preparing for the Big 12 tourney. That's KU basketball player tees from Grady Dick, Jalen Wilson, KJ Adams, Zach Clements, and then on the K-State side, I've seen the Keontae Johnson design is absolutely stupendous. And then Marquise Noel, that one I'm sure is also stupendous. It's just not right in front of me at the moment. I can see the Keontae Johnson one. Everything here, every time I am overwhelmed by how good everything that Charlie Hustle does is. I mean, they've got some beer and barbecue. They've got all sorts of the KC Hart designs, and I am an enormous fan of what Charlie Hustle does. So come on out and see it all for yourself. Plus, with the secret password 810 Live, there are some shirts remaining. You can come in here, you can give us the password, talk to one of the wonderful employees here at Charlie Hustle, and then they'll get you hooked up with a T-shirt of one of the schools that they have available right now. We got a few left of all the local schools, and then Arkansas also, if you want to go Razorback instead of Tiger, Jayhawk, or Wildcat. But that only goes for the next hour while supplies last. They have plenty of supplies, of course, if you want to come and gear up for the tourney. But the 810 Live secret password is just going up until 1 o'clock, or until they run out of free ones to give out. There are a few left, though, so get on out here in person in Charlie Hustle's Plaza location out here, and your eyes are going to immediately begin to wander, and at that point, ball game over. I'm leaving here with some Charlie Hustle socks. Is basically what I'm telling you.
Okay, very good. 810 Live is the password to go and get some free gear from Charlie Hustle down on the Plaza. I asked Adam Teicher this question as we were talking about Frank Clark being released and Orlando Brown not signing him the $20 million, and you say, okay, they were sitting at like, $28 million cap hit for Frank Clark, a $20 million cap hit for Orlando Brown under the franchise tag. Tyreek Hill is making $31 million against the cap this year for the Miami Dolphins. And yes, decisions have to be made with what route you're going to take. I mean, a different world has $51 million against the cap for Tyreek Hill and Orlando Brown. There is a different world that exists that is the case this year. That is not the world in reality that the Chiefs are living in. So I asked Adam this question, but do the Chiefs have a bad contract on the books right now?
When you asked Adam that, my first thought was, how cruel of it would it be of me to immediately just say Joe Thuney?
That was my first thought,
because it's a different game, right? It's a different game. At that point, it's, do they have a contract of a really good player who they're playing just more money? Like, Joe Thuney should be the highest paid guard in football. I just wouldn't want to be the team with the highest paid guard in football. Yeah. But that's very, very different than, an underperforming contract as just opposed to a high-cost one. And Joe Thuney was a free agent, a legit one. So it wasn't, this huge deal plus a first-round pick. So I knew the moment that those contract details came out, I knew there would come a day where I would have to be the one that says, hey, listen, I don't love this contract, even if he is a really excellent player. And he's been excellent, and I'm not here to gripe about it. But forced to answer that question, I do think his deal is not a great one, but you also use the word albatross, and it's definitely not that either.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, for the last couple of years, the easy answer would have been, well, Frank Clark. I mean, Frank Clark is not playing anywhere near to the amount of money that's the cap hit for him, whereas Joe Thuney had a 90 pass blocking grade last year. 90 pass blocking grade. Yes, he's making $22 million, but he's not making $22 million as a guy who's just getting bowled over like Leatherwood with the Raiders, and it's like you spent a first-round draft pick on that guy, and he's just not living up to it, and he's injured and never in the. It's like, wow, you got to carry that contract. No, he's actually playing at elite level. He's probably making more money than an elite level guard even, but at least he's playing at that level. And the comment that you made about paying elite money for good players is how you get into trouble. And the Chiefs haven't done that. And Tyreek Hill is a great player, so it's not elite money for Tyreek Hill as a good player. That would have been elite money for elite player, just too much money for elite player, where it would have been elite money for Orlando Brown, who's been a good player. He's been good, but I think he's going to be overvalued on the free agent market.
And for Tooney, this deal is very hard to maneuver out of after they restructured it. So he's going to play out the next 2, if not 3 years of this deal. And if he keeps playing at this level, I don't think Brett Veach is ever going to issue an apology for his $22 million per. It's just a lot of money for a guard. That's all.
Yep, absolutely. And probably this year, next year, and in 2025, they can save $16 million against the cap, unless they decide to restructure him again, which I would not be on board with that, but we'll see. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We will talk some college hoops. Myron Medcalf from ESPN is our guest next. Hey, Kansas City, Jason Anderson here.
This Sports Center is brought to you by Zero Res. Right now at Zero Res, get 3 rooms cleaned for $119 and $50 off air duct cleaning packages. Book online at ZeroResKC.com or call 816-425-3655 for Zero Res. The Chiefs news has been flowing in the last 24 hours as the Chiefs will reportedly not place the franchise tag on Orlando Brown Jr. ahead of the franchise tag deadline, now leaving the Chiefs and Brown really up in the air for what the next few weeks may look like, and Kansas City appears to be set to have a new left tackle protecting Patrick Mahomes' blind side next season. The Chiefs are also setting up to cut Frank Clark, the defensive end who rose to 3rd all-time in NFL postseason sacks, but he'll be moving on to a new location as well, as the Chiefs and Clark could not agree to new terms on a restructured deal. I'm Joshua Brisco, here in the Zone. Myron Medcalf coming up next. I'm Joshua Brisco. This is SportsCenter.
The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Wash your hands, wash your butt, man. That's it. That's all. That's what I tell everybody. Those are 2 things you got to make sure you keep those clean. We'll be all right.
On Sports Radio 810.
I will continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco and Beards. We'll catch up with Myron Medcalf, very busy man from ESPN, our college hoops insider, presented by Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City. We'll talk with him about a lot of different things going on. Championship week going on, as we've got you covered right here on Sports Radio 810. Live coverage of the Big 12 tournament brought to you by Barstool Sportsbook, Inside Hollywood Casino, Greenlight Dispensary, Jay Rieger and Company, CBD American Shaman, and also Miller Lite. So that's what we got going on. We'll be down at the tournament. We'll also have some live listen-ins. We'll do a lot of different things this week around the Big 12 tournament, which should be an absolute blast. And your guess is as good as mine as to who's going to win this thing and be playing on Saturday night for the automatic bid. But ultimately, the odds are pretty strong that the championship game will be against a couple of teams that are already in, but maybe 1 seed, 2 seeds on the line. We talk now with Myron Medcalf from ESPN College Hoops Insider, presented by the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City. Myron, welcome into the show. How are you, sir?
Doing well, man. How you doing?
I am doing just fine. We're gearing up and getting ready for the Big 12 tournament coming up this week, starting tomorrow night with a West Virginia-Texas Tech game, which got some intrigue as West Virginia, I think they're already in the tournament, but probably wanting to avoid and make sure they definitely avoid Dayton with the win. Texas Tech has all sorts of stuff going on in their program. Then you've got Bedlam with Oklahoma State needing a win or 2 to get into the tournament. So I don't know the last time, Myron, that I really ever cared about a Wednesday night at the Big 12 tournament.
Well, that's what happens when everybody's in contention like that, right? Where everybody's got something on the line. So it says a lot about the strength of just that entire league, man. I mean, it's amazing how far ahead the Big 12 has been than everybody else. I mean, I've talked about it, I think, on this show before, but, like, if you go on the KenPom rankings, every league has a really bad team. Every major conference has at least one really bad team. I'm not talking about a team struggling, like a really terrible team. And literally the Big 12, every team in this league is top 55 on KenPom. Like, that's maybe unprecedented. I mean, that is a margin that we just haven't seen between a league and everybody else. And it's just fascinating to see that we're going into the Big 12 tournament. And to your point, a lot of these games aren't going to mean much until we get to Friday and Saturday and Sunday in a lot of these leagues. But you got to watch this from day one because of what's on the line.
I was talking yesterday with a guy who covers KU, and we were talking about it could you make a case that winning the Big 12 tournament is tougher than making a Final Four run? Like, if Kansas is a 1 seed, they play a 16, and then they'd play an 8 or 9 seed, and then we'll see what happens in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. But, if you look at Bracket Matrix, they would play West Virginia, a 10 seed, if West Virginia wins on Thursday. More than likely play Baylor, that's a 2 seed if they win. And then on Saturday they would play Texas or Kansas State if we're talking about seeding. That's like a 2 or a 3. So they'd be beating a 10 seed, a 2 seed, and a 2 or a 3 seed. And a team doesn't have to beat 2 seeds to get to the Final Four in the NCAA tournament. So, I mean, and back-to-back days. Like, you got to do that 3 days in a row to win that. Like, whoever's winning the Big 12 tournament will have definitely earned it when they're cutting down the nets on Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. I mean, that may be a more difficult path than anything you'll see in the NCAA tournament. this league, in terms of who's prepared for the tournament, like this league, what will intimidate anyone? Like if Oklahoma State gets in, let's say, like what will intimidate them? What would intimidate West Virginia? TCU, Iowa State struggled, but like, what are they going to see that they haven't already seen? And I think that's the plus and positive of that entire league, man. It's just they've legitimately been way better than any conference in America and just kind of been beating up on each other. I mean, the fact that you've got 4 teams in that league that somehow won 11 games is crazy to me. Like, how do you get 11 wins in the Big 12? How do 4 teams do that? And then right below that, you got a couple of 500 teams, Iowa State and TCU, but everyone's like, yeah. I mean, a lot of these teams around the country wouldn't be over 500, wouldn't even get to 500. So it's been fascinating to watch.
If Oklahoma State, wins a couple of games, we might be looking at the Big 12 with 4 teams in the top 12 of the overall rankings from the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee. So 4 teams in the top 3 seeds, and 8 of the 10 teams in the tournament. Like that would just be
crazy.
That'd be pretty crazy if that ends up happening. Myron Medcalf is our guest from ESPN College Hoops Insider Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City. We have tonight on our airwaves the West Coast Conference Championship, Gonzaga and St. Mary's, and I know you wrote the matchups that you are hoping to see, and that was yesterday that you wrote about the matchups you were wanting to see in these bigger tournaments. And number 2, St. Mary's and Gonzaga, Part 3, and we've got it tonight, 8 o'clock on ESPN and right here on Sports Radio 810. What do you think of Part 3 for St. Mary's and Gonzaga?
I mean, get your popcorn ready. I mean, St. Mary's had a chance to win the title outright for the first time in more than a decade. But, Gonzaga what they've done in that league has just been amazing. Kansas, to me, has the greatest achievement in the last 20-plus years in college basketball with the run in the Big 12. But Gonzaga and just their dominance has been really remarkable as well. And here we are. They split again, and now – both of them are trying to elevate their seed. If you're St. Mary's, that 5-13 game can be interesting. Can you raise your seed? Can you maybe change your position? And then Gonzaga wants to kind of lock itself into that 3 spot. I don't know if they got a lot of 2 potential, but kind of be safe there. And it's going to be fun to watch. And I think obviously they're going to play like they always play.
Yeah. And also tonight is Fairleigh Dickinson taking on Merrimack. You good with it's been a debate the last couple of days, and even last year when Bellarmine won, that the reclassification 4-year period. Are you good with that? Should it be changed? Is it sort of like, well, this when you go into it, when you go up to Division I, that there's going to be 4 years before you get to make the NCAA tournament? So Fairleigh Dickinson has already earned the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament, but they still play Merrimack for the conference championship tonight. You good with that if Merrimack wins, then it's still Fairleigh Dickinson?
No, it's the dumbest thing in sports. It's the dumbest thing in the world.
I actually didn't know your answer, so I wasn't just asking to tee you up or anything. Yeah. I didn't know what your thoughts were on that.
It's incredibly dumb. Like, what are we doing? Like, what? Like, do you go to a job and for 4 years you don't get a check because you're on probation? What does that mean? Like, what does that even mean? If you transition to Division I, you are clearly investing the resources necessary to be a Division I school. And to me, a probationary period should be for schools moving down, in my opinion, like the D1 school that suddenly wants to go D2 and they've got all these D1 resources. It makes a little more sense there for me. But if I'm coming up to D1 from D3 or D2, clearly I'm ready to invest the resources, and clearly I'm at a disadvantage because I haven't been Division I all these years. I've had to change the funding model for my entire program. I've had to amass donations that we never had. Maybe I've had to build facilities or raise money for facilities. I'm at the disadvantage. Now you want me to wait all these years to compete for conference championships and to get into the tournament? How silly is that? Like, it's one of those antiquated ideas that if you ask someone from the NCAA, what is it about, they won't have a real answer. It'll be a really dumb answer because there's just no way that anyone can tell me that you allow this school to make the transition. You say they're worthy of making the transition, and then you say, but you got to wait to actually play in the NCAA tournament. It's the dumbest thing in sports, man, honestly.
It makes it a little more tougher to make the transition to Division I because you're wanting to then compete on a level with teams that are, that have had more resources for a longer amount of time. And then when you get there, you also want to then recruit to a team that can't take those players to the NCAA tournament. Like, well, now how am I getting players to come and play for me if they know they can't go to the postseason? So now in 4 years when they can finally go to the postseason, I've had 4 years of trying to build the program with players that aren't coming here because they weren't going to go to the tournament. And how good is this program? And do I have a Q score at all for players of that caliber in this conference? Because I haven't had players that can, look at it and go, I'm going there because we got a chance to win that conference. Like the whole thing is
dumb.
Is it a deterrent to keep teams from going to D1 that they want to keep the D1 numbers down? That if you can go to the tournament the next year, just everybody's going to go and transition to D1 then.
Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing. Like, we have a school here in Minnesota, St. Thomas University, which was a D3 powerhouse. Now they've moved up to D1, and they're competing in the Summit League. Like, they're raising like $100 million to build a new arena for both D1 hockey, Division I basketball. They're upgrading their college football arena. Like, it's a lot, man. Like, you don't just move up to D1. Like, you just don't change your affiliation. And they're like, yeah, I want to be D1. Like, there are all these qualifications. And if you meet the qualifications, it doesn't make sense to me that someone then says, although you meet the criteria, we're going to make you wait. I think the way that we make people wait for stuff in sports is just silly. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and I'm not sure what they're trying to prevent. Because to your point, that school is at a disadvantage in every way. Mm-hmm. And now you're saying – they're going to be 4 years behind as they make the official transition. Like, how does that help anyone involved? And it just goes to my theory of, like, the NCAA should govern non-Division I sports only. I say that as a former D2 football player. Like, the NCAA needs to transition to a world where Power 5 athletics is not under their jurisdiction, because things like this happen that just don't make any sense.
Visiting with Myron Medcalf from ESPN, our college.
Isn't it dumb, bro? Like,
I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm not a fan of it, and I also have there's more of a emotional connection with Bellarmine and Scott Davenport that I thought it was BS that last year that they didn't get a chance to go to the tournament when winning the conference tournament, and they're still year 2 of 4 in their probationary period.
Bro, that's ridiculous. Yeah. It couldn't be me and Mary Mac. If I'm Mary Mac and I win tonight, I'm coming to the tournament. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm taking our bus, my team, and we're showing up to the tournament. I don't care if we got to play you in the park, the YMCA. I don't care if we got to play after everybody leaves. I'm playing in a tournament game. You're not going to keep me off the court.
Just take the whole team and sit front row at the Fairleigh Dickinson
I'm
and
in
whoever
the crowd.
they play
I'm in the
matchup.
crowd talking trash to everybody.
Holding
up my championship trophy, daring somebody to come and play us. Meet us in the parking lot. We'll play you there. We don't care.
Wearing the net I just cut down a couple of weeks ago around my neck.
Don't play these frauds who couldn't even beat us in the conference championship. It couldn't be me, man. Yeah. I would make a scene.
I'm going to the Fairleigh Dickinson game. That's what I'm doing. I'm taking my team and we're sitting there, 100%. We're watching, and it's nothing against Fairleigh Dickinson. It's just to let the NCAA tournament and NCAA know we are here because we should be actually on the court playing because we beat those guys and we won the tournament.
Halftime. I'm coming with my whole team at halftime. We're just going to do like Harlem Globetrotters tricks and stuff. Yep. We're gonna be in the tournament one way or the other. That's all I'm saying.
Sorry, Red Panda, you're gonna have to wait for the next game.
Hey,
we got halftime.
Wait it out.
We got the halftime scrimmage. All right.
Yep.
Myron Medcalf is our guest from ESPN. Do we have an update on Jalen Clark with UCLA and what the status might be for him in the tournament this week and also into next week?
I mean, we've been waiting for it. It's interesting to me that it's weird that we've been all waiting. It looks like Mick Cronin said today that he's not traveling to Vegas for the Pac-12 tournament. He's out with a leg injury. But it does not appear that he said he's out for next year as well. I mean, that's the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
Next week, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So that's the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, not only does it potentially change, your path and what you're capable of doing, what does the committee do? Like if this committee thinks it's UCLA and Purdue kind of battling for that one spot. Does this hurt UCLA, if they can't play to the same level in the Pac-12 tournament? I don't know the answer to that, but it's a big loss, and the fact that he's not traveling makes me feel like, it's hard to imagine him coming back and being a full participant in the first or second rounds. And it's just tough, man, because horrible timing and a UCLA team that I think can win it all, losing one of the most critical players.
It reminds me a little bit of P.J. Washington at Kentucky got injured in the SEC tournament and messed up his foot, and then it was like such an unknown. Is he going to there's a broken bone. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Do they change the seed for this team because, they're not going to have one of the best players in America and a first-round draft pick, a pro, an NBA player, and he ended up returning and played the final 2 games of that region, and that was the overtime loss. In fact, here in KC, that was the overtime loss to Auburn the year that Bruce Pearl and Auburn went there, and P.J. Washington had almost 30 points in that game. But it was interesting of are they going to move him down? And there was really no word about when he was going to come back or not. It was when is P.J. Washington going to be there? And that was the conversation the whole time. And I wonder, around Jalen Clark, with Sakai Ziegler with Tennessee, we know the answer. He's not returning. So the committee can look at what Tennessee does since that injury and say, we can assess this team from who they are and what they look like. And, this week in Nashville, whereas, you wonder if Mick Cronin keeps it purposefully vague so the committee doesn't change Jalen Clark's out. Well, now we're going to adjust your seed. Whoa, he's not out. Nobody's saying he's out.
Yeah. But at a minimum, there's a chance. And so I think, the committee's still going to evaluate this week, I think. I think it's going to matter a lot to the committee in terms of where they are. And that's a big difference, man, from 2-15, from a 2 seed to a 1 seed. So I'm interested to see. It was weird to me, man. Usually that injury happens Saturday night, right? It's Tuesday.
Yeah.
I believe he got the MRI on Sunday. I've never seen a star player in sort of this 4-day window without us knowing anything. That's weird because usually, coaches themselves want to help a team move forward. They want to be able to say, hey, listen, man, this dude is out. We got to move forward. We got to plan to play without him. But to your point, I think Mick Cronin is probably going to try to, go as far as he can. But, the committee's not going to be fooled. If he doesn't play this week and he didn't travel, I think they're going to evaluate the possibility that UCLA is going to be missing, at least for the early rounds, the Defensive Player of the Year in the Pac-12.
Yeah. Visiting with Myron Medcalf, what does it do for Tennessee without their point guard and one of the best defensive players in the country as well in Ziegler? That they lost to Auburn, but that was an Auburn team playing with a lot on the line at home, and they only lost by 9. They were in that game even without Ziegler, and now they've got the SEC tournament coming up. I asked that because Missouri more than likely will play Tennessee on Friday in the quarterfinals down in Nashville.
It changes a lot. I mean, obviously, you lose a player like that. I'm doing this. I do the 60-18 preview for ESPN, so I literally write 15,000 words on the tournament. So I go through all these teams. Tennessee being number 1 in adjusted defensive efficiency. Since 2013, only one team that was number 1 at the end of the year in defensive efficiency failed to make the Sweet 16. And that was Memphis in 2021 when they went to the NIT. So the track record of really good defensive teams at that level is pretty good. If you look at the metrics and you break it down, they're not the same team without him, but it's still a really, really good defensive team. I think the real conversation is not just the injury, it's the fact that Tennessee kind of fell apart in February, and they couldn't keep up offensively in losses to Florida and Vandy and Mizzou and Kentucky. And, they went, 4-6, I think, in their last 10 games coming into the SEC tournament. So that'll be the thing. Did this loss kind of change the whole dynamic of Tennessee, or is the truth that, Tennessee post-January hasn't been the team we saw November, December, and January? I mean, that'll be the question for them.
Visiting with Myron Medcalf from ESPN. He is our guest. He's our college hoops insider, and each and every week he's presented by Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City. award season goes on, and people care, people don't care. People may not care if it's not involved in maybe a team you cover or around, but as soon as your team gets screwed, if you think that, then award season matters. Jerry Stackhouse and Buzz Williams, the co-coach of the year in the SEC, not Dennis Gates even getting co-coach of the year. You good with that, or did Dennis Gates at least deserve a co next to his name in coach of the year?
Yeah, I mean, if you can't decide that Dennis has to be there, I mean, if you're telling me that you think there are multiple candidates for that award, then the guy who went 11-7 in league play, a year after that team won 12 games total, and 5 games in the SEC, you got to give him one of those spots as well. I mean, I'm sure he doesn't take it personally, but I did feel like he's as good as anybody. And worthy of that honor for sure.
It just messes up the narrative around here, Myron, in that the 2 local teams that needed a coach went out and got a coach, and then they were the coach of the year in their conference. So it screws the whole thing up, Myron. And now we could say that about Jerome Tang, who obviously is very deserving. Dennis Gates is deserving, but now we can't say that now. So clearly Desiree Reed-Francois messed up and didn't get the best coach in the SEC. So she's behind Gene Taylor yet again. Good job. so yeah.
Could have been better.
What are you going to do? Also, the steals leader in the SEC and the all-time steals leader at Mizzou for a season is not on the all-defensive first team either in Des Moines Hodge. But who cares, because they'll be down in Nashville as a 4 seed with the double bye and getting ready for that. Let's talk about the Big 12 tournament. We discussed it just from a general perspective of really just how good these teams are in the Big 12. But KU the 1 seed, K-State the 3 seed. You wrote as to one of your anticipated or matchups you want to see, KU and K-State Saturday night at T-Mobile Arena. 5 o'clock on ESPN would be that matchup. Do you think there's how much of a chance do you give for that matchup being KU and K-State? Because, again, we've talked about this. K-State's got to beat TCU just to get in a matchup on Friday against what is probably going to be Texas, and then get by Texas to see that. That matchup on Saturday would be historic because the 2 teams would have had to really earn it to get there. So do you give it much of a chance of seeing KU, K-State Saturday night, which would be great for here?
I want to be honest in this.
Yeah.
Every matchup seems possible for the title game of the Big 12. Legitimately. I mean, it's that league. No, Iowa State has given nothing in the last, few weeks. Obviously, you get the Caleb Grill news. They get Baylor on the road, but that didn't signify what they've really been over the last month. How many Iowa State fans are going to be there in Kansas City? You tell me that team can't find itself again? Of course it could. So I think it's possible, certainly. I mean, every team in that field, with the exception of maybe Texas Tech and kind of what they're dealing with. But if you tell me they're going to play to their ceiling, why couldn't they make a run to the title game? And I think it's very possible. And I think if you're Jerome Tang, the best thing Jerome Tang did, I think this year, was he sort of stopped the bleeding, right?
Yeah.
So they had that run where they go 1-4, I believe, right? Is that right? They go 1-4, and then they went 4 in a row, right, before they lose to, I think, West Virginia at the end of the season. That, to me, was a sign of a team finding itself again, kind of getting back to where it had been earlier before those stumbles. So I think it's possible, man. There's no matchup that would surprise me in this league, in this crazy league.
Do you think they need to play 2 Saturday to secure a 2 seed, or beating TCU and even a loss to Texas on Friday night would be enough for K-State with another win like TCU, which is like a 6 seed in the NCAA tournament, would be enough to catapult them maybe over a Marquette or an Arizona, depending on what happens in the Pac-12?
I think they have to assume they got to get to Saturday, right? I mean, I think if you're Jerome Tang, you can't play with the possibility.
Yeah,
certainly possible, but I think you feel like if you get to Saturday, that's locked up, no matter what happens, no matter who you're playing. So I think that has to be the attitude for sure. But that's the thing about this league is there are so many leagues where, the teams that are solidly in the field really can't help themselves. They can hurt themselves more than they can help themselves. Like a lot of teams around the country are going, don't lose that early matchup. If you're in the Pac-12 and you're UCLA and you just lost Jalen Clark, you're like, don't lose that first game. Don't lose early and give the committee more reasons to snatch that 2 seed from you. Whereas in the Big 12, there's opportunity to gain something. It's not just what do you really lose. Every team in that league is top 55 on KenPom when you're playing at a neutral site. What do you lose? So I think that's going to be the difference in terms of like the teams have multiple teams have legitimately the ability to elevate their seed line.
One of the other things we've talked about throughout most of the season is KU and a 1 seed and ending up in Kansas City. Do they need, which would be awesome. Looking forward to it. Do they need to win on Saturday night to secure the Midwest, or the fact that they've already got 15 quad ones and could end up with 18, 19, depending on, or maybe they got 16. I haven't looked at it lately, but they're going to have an unprecedented amount of quad one wins. Is that enough just to simply say, even if they don't win on Saturday, that they could catapult ahead of Houston and get the Midwest in Kansas City with if Alabama wins, then Alabama would head to Louisville. Is Kansas in a good enough position to where they don't have to win the Big 12 to head to Kansas City?
I mean, I think the entire net rankings were invented to put Kansas in that position, because of the quad one wins. And if you're that far ahead, and what the NCAA has said is, the most important criteria that they measure, I'm not sure how you lose that. And I'm going to Houston. I'm going to Fort Worth for the American Tournament for TV, so I'm doing those Houston games. And they've been remarkable. But again, that's a team where even if you beat Memphis in the title game, what does it really change in the eyes of the committee? So I think it feels to me KU, with those quad one wins and the margin between them and everybody else, I feel like that gives them that advantage. I think they have the inside track to the top overall seed. But certainly, again, they're going into this in 2 different spots. Kansas maybe is thinking, hey, I got to advance to a certain spot to get that locked up. If you're Houston, you got to win the championship to avoid a loss that could possibly damage your opportunity to get that top overall seed.
Yeah, you would if you're Houston and you play Memphis in the championship, you would earn another quad one by being a neutral site. So that would be 6-1 for Houston if they win that one. Whereas Kansas, if they win the Big 12 tournament, they would be 18-6 in the quad one. 16-1, 6-1, or 18-6 for quad one victories. I'm just not sure how one team can be put over another. Like, it would just make sense if it's just like, okay, we'll put Houston in either, whether it be Louisville or Vegas, and KU gets Kansas City. But we'll see. Houston's number 1 in the net ranking. I get it, and but man, 5 quad one wins versus the next closest team with fewer quad one wins is St. Mary's. It's 2-2. And then, Gonzaga with 5. But other than that, you're seeing a lot of teams with, more than that. So 15-6, 16-17. Even if they don't win on Saturday night, they'd be 17-7 in the quad one. That'd be really difficult to say. Now you can't get the geographical preference over a Houston team.
Sense.
So, all right, real quick, who wins the Big 12 and who wins the SEC tournament?
Yeah, man, it's interesting. Give me Texas to win the Big 12.
Okay.
I think teams like Kansas that have had a schedule like that have won that many games, it's hard to sustain that when you're playing against a bunch of teams that have a lot to play for as well. SEC, I'm going to go with – I want to pick Kentucky, but they've just been too hit or miss, so I'll go with Alabama. The low risk pick, I would say, in that field.
It makes sense with Alabama and Texas winning those, so they certainly high enough seeds to do that. So Myron Medcalf from ESPN College Hoops Insider, Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City benefits each and every time we have Myron on. Myron, really appreciate the time, man. Enjoy the conference tournaments this week, and look forward to seeing you in a few weeks here in Kansas City in the regional.
Sounds good, man.
Absolutely. There's Myron Medcalf from ESPN, College Hoops Insider. Again, Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City. Each and every time Myron is on, they benefit. We always appreciate Myron Medcalf joining us and the time he gives us. And there's some fun matchups still to be had. And one of his matchups that he was anticipating that he wanted to see happen in the conference tournaments. This was, before the conference tournaments started. Put out the matchups he wanted to see, and one of those being St. Mary's and Gonzaga. That comes up tonight right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. 8 o'clock is the West Coast Conference Championship. We've got coverage all week long of Championship Week, live coverage of the Big 12 tournament brought to you by Barstool Sportsbook, Inside Hollywood Casino, Greenlight Dispensary, Jay Rieger and Company, CBD American Shaman, and Miller Lite. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling more Zone Night after this.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
I was going to tell you when you came in here that there's going to be a time when I'm going to be at your house while you're asleep.
On Sports Radio 810.
Thank you to Myron Medcalf from ESPN, College Hoops Insider, Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City. Myron's going to be at the AAC Conference Tournament. We'll be here at the Big 12 Conference Tournament. Live coverage of the Big 12 Tournament brought to you by Barstool Sportsbook, Inside Hollywood Casino, Greenlight Dispensary, Jay Rieger and Company, CBD American Shaman, and Miller Lite. Josh Brisco is hanging out at Charlie Hustle on the Plaza, and some cool giveaways, some goodies that are there with Charlie Hustle. Josh, what's going on there at Charlie Hustle right now? Josh?
There we go. Sorry, Jason. I had my microphone. Here's the thing. So Marco Marquez is here now, and did he do anything wrong whatsoever? Absolutely not. Is this No. Is this completely under my umbrella? Yes, absolutely, 1,000% it is. But I thought for at least a second I could make it sound like I was throwing Marco under the bus. No, you can come out here and you can see Marco and also me here at Charlie Hustle on the Plaza, because as you said, the Big 12 tournament is going to be an absolute extravaganza. And I'm just wondering if you have all the gear you need, because if you don't, I've got some suggestions. And of course, as previously discussed, look, is this Mizzou gear here going to get repped within the confines of the Big 12 tournament? I actually imagine somebody probably will do that, and should, because it's going to be an incredible time out there in the P&L district at KC Live. But you want to come out here to Charlie Hustle right now, you can come and check out the brand new collection that they have launched this week, preparing for the Big 12 tournament. That's KU basketball player tees from Grady Dick, Jalen Wilson, KJ Adams, and Zach Clements, and K-State basketball tees with Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noel. Plus, as Marco and I, and before that Ted and I, and before that Dylan and I, all went around and looked at the various everythings that they've got, various ways you too can rep Kansas City in whatever colors or in some cases, barbecue and beer brands, or, of course, the sports teams. And now with NIL opening it up, individual players on these shirts. And it's just, I can see one of the Danny and the Miracles KUTs from over here. You've got basically unlimited options here at Charlie Hustle. It's all tremendous. It's all incredibly comfortable. I know that by extrapolation, because I own a lot of Charlie Hustle stuff, not because I've tried on every garment here at Charlie Hustle today, but if they asked me to, I might, because it is a tremendous collection they got out here. And if you get out here in the next 20 minutes and you get in under the wire, I think we're going to be running real low right now. But we do still have a few T-shirts remaining from some of the local colleges if you come in and you deliver the promo code 810live. And by promo code, I mean secret password. Because it's a password. It's
not
like
a code.
Unlocks a whole new – there's a whole back room you can get into.
I see.
There's a tunnel. It takes you actually out under the fountain out front here. And then most of what I said there was not true. But the thing about saying the 810 Live password and getting a free tee, that was real, as was everything I said before about all the great stuff out here at Charlie Hustle.
So, news that's coming out in the NFL. Matt Lombardo tweets out just a little bit ago that talks between the Ravens and Falcons about a trade for Lamar Jackson progressed significantly last week in Indianapolis. We are still waiting for the 3 o'clock deadline, 2 hours and 20 minutes, to see what tag Lamar Jackson gets from the Ravens. It seems, by all indication, they are not going to come to an agreement on a long-term deal. We've talked about it, that Lamar Jackson, the reports have been that his starting point is the Deshaun Watson contract, a fully guaranteed dollars. The Ravens are not willing to do that. Are other teams willing to do that? Well, maybe the Falcons, because if you're going to trade for Lamar Jackson, you know for a fact you're going to give him what he's asking for. You're not trading for him and then go, oh, crap, we didn't know that we were going to have to give him a fully guaranteed deal. The frickin' Browns had to give Deshaun Watson what he wanted in a fully guaranteed deal because that was the only way they could trade for Deshaun Watson. He was going to go, I believe, to Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken, and then the Browns said, okay, we'll give in. We'll give you the fully guaranteed deal. And he said, cool, I'm going to Cleveland then. I will do that. And the Falcons were like, we're not going to give you fully guaranteed dollars and set this precedent. Not going to happen. The precedent is not going to be set by us. And it was set by the Browns. So Lamar Jackson wants at least that. And if you're going to trade for him, then you're going to have to give him that much money. There's also reports, as I was talking with Adam Teicher, it has not progressed the way that I thought when it was the first couple of things came out, Josh. And the first report was that the Green Bay Packers have given permission to Aaron Rodgers to talk to the New York Jets about a trade. 10 minutes later, a report came out that said the Jets and Packers have been discussing trades and what it would take to get Aaron Rodgers. And I was talking with Teicher, and I'm like, it sounds like the Tyreek Hill deal when it was like the Chiefs have given Tyreek Hill the permission to seek a trade. Chiefs and Dolphins and Jets are talking about a trade. Chiefs have traded Tyreek Hill to the Dolphins. It's like, yeah, that's been going on for 2 weeks. Those back-to-back reports within 10 minutes, I thought, all right, we may see something here pretty soon with Aaron Rodgers. But we might be a day or two away from Aaron Rodgers being traded to the Jets and Lamar Jackson potentially being traded to the Falcons, which would then go along with Deshaun Watson last year being traded to the Browns, Russell Wilson being traded to the Broncos, Matt Stafford being traded to the Rams. And we've talked about like franchise-type quarterbacks and what it takes to have that, and you're sort of, that's the biggest equation. And I don't remember a time where so many quarterbacks that were going to make big-time money, and that's probably the reason. Deshaun Watson, another set of reasons, obviously. But, Russ wasn't happy in Seattle. They move on. Year one, they seem to be in the right. But these players that are changing teams at the quarterback position that at one time we thought would never leave the team they are on has been really interesting over just a couple of years span, 3 years if you throw in Stafford.
Yeah, and I think some of the middle-class quarterbacks, a guy like Kirk Cousins, I think gets a little bit of the credit for like having a little more of a flexible future of quarterbacks actually moving around as much as like superstars in the NBA do, right?
Yeah.
Because to your point, guys typically, with some exceptions at the very ends of their careers, think about the extenuating circumstances for Peyton Manning and for Tom Brady even, I mean, you want to go back to Joe Montana. I can't remember where he ended up, but like you can see some of that, but typically it's guys later in their powers. And as you mentioned with Lamar in particular and Watson, extenuating circumstances is one way to put it. But with Lamar, it is a guy looking for the big payday and then now realizing that maybe his best match isn't with the team itself. I also think it's kind of interesting. This is a real like minutia thing, but all of this matters more when the players do have a little more mobility this way. What was the story of last week for the Baltimore Ravens? It was their spot in the NFLPA report card, the strength coach they fired, and players coming out saying that the strength and training team had inhibited their careers, if not outright tanked their careers because of their treatment within that building. If you're Lamar Jackson right now and you're a guy who's already, been injured plenty, caught some flack for that last year's entire end of year conversation about his knee swelling and when he could come back and all of that, that feels like it has a little extra juice to it now when you see all the other players who've come out and said, yeah, we can't trust the Ravens to manage all of these things. I mean, again, it's minutia, and I thought that was interesting just in general, kind of in light of the conversations we had about Lamar and then that we had about that NFLPA report card. Mm-hmm. But now, whenever you're talking about, hey, maybe that relationship is broken, and Lamar says, you can tag me, but I do not want to be here. You have not taken care of me in my time with this team when I was excellent, an MVP, not just good. He's not been Kirk Cousins. He's been stupendous. And I wonder about some of the intricacies of where that relationship is right now, or if making changes in those departments could be the thing that helps mend that relationship.
So we've seen with Russell Wilson that Denver traded what they traded and then paid him, and it has blown up in their face. Matt Stafford, I mean, he gets injured when he's with the Rams, and it's unfortunate, and we'll see what happens with his shoulder. But it worked out. They won a Super Bowl. Deshaun Watson, the Texans didn't want to trade him. It wasn't like the Texans weren't willing to give him the money. It was what was going on with Deshaun Watson, the front office. He wasn't happy. He was going to sit out. He wasn't ever going to play for them. It was best for all parties involved. And now Lamar Jackson. If the Ravens aren't willing to give Lamar Jackson all that money, are you a team that would be willing to step up and give multiple first-rounders and all that money to Lamar with the team that had him and said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to give him that money. You're going to give him that money and then a couple of first-rounders. And I think that's the position of Is it desperation? Is it, no, you truly believe in the guy, and once you get that figured out, then everything else can fall into place? Because the Falcons have already gone through the situation of having to purge contracts because they were in such bad salary cap situations, and the Ravens are not willing to do that, but the Falcons might be willing to do that for Lamar Jackson. I would just be worried with what happened with Russell Wilson last year. And I'm not saying Lamar and Russell Wilson are the same player, but what happened with Russell Wilson last year, where the team and the player sort of got off track, and the team was like, yeah, we're not going to give him all that money. We're not going to continue doing this. We're more willing to trade him than keep him around, and that includes going with Geno Smith or Drew Lock, who we're trading for. And maybe Sean Payton gets more out of Russell Wilson, but I'd be concerned about trading a lot of picks for a player that the team is not willing to pay themselves.
Yeah, I just don't know if we really have enough precedent to make that to make that connection. Where again, Russell Wilson and Matt Stafford, who won the Super Bowl, still,
right.
They did it so late in their careers that there might be a peer that you could go to, but what it does is it makes you say, am I more reliant on my own scouting and management abilities, or am I more reliant on me thinking that the Ravens are better at this than my team is? Mm-hmm. And that's why it's going to be situational, player to player and team to team. But yeah, I mean, look, if I'm the Falcons, my interest in Lamar Jackson has virtually nothing to do with the Ravens balking at that number eventually, because they are different teams in different situations. I kind of like the Geno Smith deal for the Seahawks, and I kind of hate the Derek Carr deal for the Saints. Those deals are very similar for very similar quarterbacks. That if you switch the quarterbacks but they kept the contracts the same, I wouldn't want the Saints to have done what they did, and I kind of get why the Seahawks did. Now, I also could build you some arguments for the other sides, because again, it is minutia. But with a team like the Falcons, who right now, I actually don't think that they are a great quarterback away, which is the one piece of balking I might do, because I think maybe there's some belief that roster is actually in a better place than it's shown itself to be. Mm-hmm. But notwithstanding, I would be willing to be a team that acquires Lamar Jackson and just assume, the Ravens bungled it. However the Ravens did it, that's on them to figure out. And if Lamar gets hurt, Lamar gets hurt. But it's not like he's been taking these huge bone-crushing hits and his body's just breaking down. We are talking about, knees and swelling and ligaments and things like that are it makes him harder to diagnose and also harder to predict. It's not a wear and tear kind of thing, perhaps. But mm-hmm. I am not afraid of making a move for Lamar Jackson if I'm a team if I'm the Jets, really. That might be the team I'd actually rather have that conversation about, and they're too busy trying to coax out Aaron Rodgers out of his cave, and I'd be spending more time talking to the Ravens if I was.
Yeah, I mean, we might see Aaron Rodgers and Lamar Jackson moved in the next week or so, along with Russell Wilson last year, Deshaun Watson last year, and a lot of different quote unquote franchise type quarterbacks that are on the move. And the Jets, part of people saying yesterday or whenever it was, I guess it was yesterday, Derek Carr and that contract coming out, that maybe the Jets had chosen Aaron Rodgers. Said, well, we're going to go Aaron Rodgers, and Derek Carr's like, all right, I'm going to go sign with the Saints. And that was the precursor to then something being done between Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets, and then some of the reports coming out today. We'll see what happens. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back, wrap up this hour. Coming up next.
Follow the show on Twitter at J810Anderson, at JB Brisco, at Beards McFly, and at Sports Radio 810. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
I was thinking about that as, you were grabbing your wiener. And so I'm like,
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Josh Brisco is at Charlie Hustle, the Plaza. Todd Leabo is at Sporting KC Media Day. We're going to talk to John Polskamp coming up in the next segment, Sporting KC goalkeeper. Josh, you were there at Charlie Hustle. What all is going on today while you are there present in that store?
We've had some great chats with some people who've come in. I'm giving a huge shout out to Tracy, who came in and said some real nice things about this particular radio program. So appreciate the people who've gotten to come in and say hi, and really just to inflate our egos whenever possible. And then, of course, also you can come in and get incredible deals and incredible gear to get you ready for the Big 12 tournament, where we're going to be shooting Charlie Hustle shirts out of a T-shirt cannon at some point. I'm making sure, I'm going to see if I can get that as an amendment somewhere, to make sure that it is in my job description, that is something that I'm going to be allowed to do this weekend. And you don't have to wait for them to get launched out of cannons. You can just swing through the Plaza location down here, the new Charlie Hustle right here on the Plaza. All sorts of great new deals from the KU player shirts, the K-State player shirts, so much of the KC Heart merch, plus you've got everything from some of the barbecue joints, some of the beer, some of the great things about Kansas City, and in every colorway you could ever ask for. Plus, beanies that I'm going to get, socks that I'm going to get. There's a flag I'm probably going to get. They got KC Current. I mean, here's the thing, man. I don't really want to leave is my thing. I've got one backpack. I don't know how full I can get it. I might live here now, Jason.
Do you think the feeling is mutual with those there?
No.
Okay.
They keep saying, show's over at 1, right? No, 2. It's over at 2. Oh, is it? They told us you were done at 1. I was hoping this might be over at noon.
Shoot. Can he still leave at 1, though? Is it okay if we just kick him out at 1?
Oh, they're pushing me out. But they're saying you can still come. It's just that I got to go.
Yep.
I'm not leaving. Yes. I'm staying here.
You should do that. John Polskamp next.
The Zone with Jason Anderson.
So I looked.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we'll continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Brisco and Beards. We head up until 2 o'clock. Todd Leabo at Sporting KC Media Day. We'll get a chance to talk with John Polskamp, the goalkeeper for Sporting. And, of course, you can hear that right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. The Sporting matches coming up against the Galaxy on Saturday after drawing with the Rapids and getting ready to play at home against LA. And unfortunately, I don't know. I'm not saying that I had money on Sporting to win in regulation. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it. I am saying it. I'm not saying it. I'm not sure. But we'll talk with John Polskamp coming up here in just a little bit. We've talked a lot about the NFL and what may happen over the next couple of hours. We've discussed Orlando Brown. We've also talked about the fact that Frank Clark is no longer under contract with the Chiefs. And, you know, there are a number of things to get into and talk about with Frank Clark that I, certainly would like to discuss. But at the same time, I know that we're about to talk to John Polskamp here in just a second. So I was getting ready to get into a longer discussion, and then I see Beards answer the phone. So, Josh, do you think Beards is talking to Leabo or just ordering lunch?
I think he right now is actually on Charlie Hustle's website trying to see if he can find any of this stuff instead of just coming out to where I'm at the Plaza location of Charlie Hustle.
That's that's exactly right.
Better hustle on out here.
He's still on hold. He's still talking with him. I think at this point he might actually be discussing like lunch or where he's going to go after the show with Leabo.
I actually think right now,
he said
if
yes.
if you turn Beards' mic on right now, I think you're going to hear him saying, "All right, Leabo, no, stay right there. I'm just going to keep talking. No, I know you didn't even go to Sporting Media Day at all, but we're just going to do this just to mess with Jason." I think that's what you would hear if Beards turned his mic on right now.
That would be great. Let's see if Jason can stall for an hour. Like, you kidding me? We have press conferences for the Chiefs 4 times a week during the show. You think I can't stall and just dance for an hour? I can dance for an hour.
It's going to be cool, assuming this interview does come through, to have 2 people who are best at playing defense just talk to each other.
That's right. I'm just, you know what?
2 people who specialize in keeping others from scoring.
Beards is trying to strike shot after shot to go to break, and I just keep knocking it away, just punching it out like I'm John Polskamp, who joins us now here in the Zone on Sports Radio 810 WHB. John, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on.
Well, I really appreciate you joining us. The youngest goalkeeper to start Week 1 of the league season is John Polskamp. What's this lead up and training and getting ready for this season, coming off of what you were able to accomplish last year, filling in an injury role, but starting to establish yourself in MLS? What's the lead up in these first couple of matches been like?
Yeah, a lot of hard work. That's for sure. We spent, quite a bit of time in Arizona as a team, prepping this year, working really hard in preseason. Every single one of the guys really brought it this year in terms of fitness and quality. And with myself, just staying extra and doing a lot of extra reps and working and really trying to pinpoint those things that'll help me on the weekend, because what really matters is performing on the weekend and getting the result when it matters. So yeah, just a lot of training, a lot of recovery off the field, a lot of studying video and such. So yeah, after the good rest during off season, the gas tank's at 100. So just expensing all your energy and focus on prepping for the game.
You look back over the last few years, and from LA to Sporting, and then you get the contract and you get opportunities, and you're starting right now for Sporting. What do you think of when you look back over the 3 years in your very young career / young life, John, of where you are right now in this position and this opportunity as, like we said, the youngest goalkeeper to start week 1 of the league season?
Yeah. I mean, I have to remind myself from time to time to stop and look back, and my parents always joke with me and tell me the same thing when I start to get a little ahead of myself or start to, maybe I'm frustrated with something and then I'm venting to them, and they even remind me all the time, like, hey, just stop, take a breath, and look back at the journey that brought you here, and it holds a lot of truth that taking the time to do that from time to time really, it's a moment where you can be proud of yourself, right? And you can look back and have a bit of happiness, just kind of looking back and realize you are accomplishing what you set out to do. But with that said, looking back, at some of the things that went well or some of the negative things that I overcame, it's just more fuel for the fire. Anytime I look back, really, it just motivates me more for the future, and making sure I'm setting up that future as good as I can. So, yeah, anytime I look back, it's always just becomes a motivating factor going forward.
So far this season, right now it's 174 minutes plus stoppage time of consecutive minutes without allowing a goal. I know that first 6-7 minutes of the match against Portland, like to have that one back, but it certainly feels like some of the questions about this this team, John, on the defense and what would happen getting some offense back, and there was going to be some goals scored this year that may be less of a question mark. What have you seen from the back line and even yourself in these first couple of matches and only allowing the one goal in the first few minutes of action to start the season?
Yeah. I think the back line has been for the most part really good, and for the most part myself, including myself in that. We haven't given up a ton of super high quality chances for the opponent. That's not to say that there hasn't been some, but for the most part, when there has been, I'm happy to have stepped up in some moments and made some big plays. There was the one moment in Portland you bring up that unfortunately didn't go our way for a couple of us, myself included. But other than that, we haven't been giving up a whole ton, and the few that we have, we've been dealing with it, and so. Getting a clean sheet away in Colorado is a big achievement. It's a big result. So it's something that we should be proud of, especially defensively, but even offensively. We created a ton of chances. Credit to Yarborough. He's a great guy and a great goalkeeper, and he had himself a night.
Yeah, he did.
He had himself a night in Colorado. So that's going to happen. But for us to have a good night ourselves defensively and come away with a clean sheet is something we should be proud of. And going into Galaxy at home, we have a ton of confidence defensively. Is
it frustrating to come out of those two matches and know that there wasn't a win, there weren't 3 points that you got, when it certainly felt like you guys, and maybe you'll say it, maybe not, I'll say it for you, but it felt like you guys were the better side in both matches. And like you said, the guy on the other side has just a fantastic night. And that's got to be frustrating when you feel like that guy just has a fantastic night, and at least all the chances one would have been put into the back of the net, and it didn't happen. So is it tough to not get frustrated this early in the season, knowing that it's a long season coming up?
Yeah, I mean, look, every player's gonna have the tendency to look back at the what ifs. What if that one went in, or what if that went our way? But like you just said, it's a long season, and the points are going to come, the wins are going to come. What's most important is that we're feeling good about the way we're playing, which we are. So no, I wouldn't say it's overly frustrating that the win hasn't came quite yet, because we know we're knocking on the door, and we've had a tough schedule, coming into the season. Portland away and Colorado away are two difficult road trips. So to come away with a point and two good performances is definitely something that we should be proud of, and definitely should not be overly frustrated with or down on ourselves about at all. We're playing good, and the points and results are going to come.
Would you, I mean, it seems like there's an obvious answer to this from a team standpoint. John Polskamp is our guest. Would you rather have a game to where you do relatively nothing because the defense has just been that good and there aren't really many opportunities for the other side to, give you a lot of work? Or would you rather be in a game to where you're just saving them right and left and there's a lot of action for you, but maybe it's a little more fun personally for you to be able to be involved in so many different plays? The team standpoint would be the obvious answer, but I just wonder, like, from the goalkeeper standpoint of how much fun it is, like your reaction after a couple of double saves you've had in your career, which seemed like a lot of fun rather than just standing back there and letting everybody else do the work.
No, I would have to go with the first, and that is,
I know.
if these guys do a good job and I have a nice easy night, that's definitely what I prefer, because the thing that really makes me happy is getting wins and getting clean sheets. So if I can win and get a clean sheet, I'll be buzzing on that and more excited and happy about that than a night where I've making 7, 8, 9, 10 saves, but maybe the result doesn't come, or maybe I had to do more than I was hoping. So yeah, I mean, in the cases that does happen where I'm called into action a lot, I hope I can step up to the plate. I'm always wanting to help guys out, bail guys out, but yeah, no, ideally they make my life easy.
Yeah, nothing wrong with going to work and having an easy day. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
John Polskamp is our guest. Would you, if you had your choice of like a big moment to come through on, would it be, somebody in the open field that's a breakaway and you stop that, or a penalty kick, or maybe a corner that has a shot and a volley and a rebound, and you've got to, you go right and left and on the, like, what would be the most satisfying save for John Polskamp?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, really any of the above. I mean, obviously a penalty, saving 10 holds a good light in most people's eyes, even if they're maybe not, the hardest technical to pull off. It's more, there's a bit more luck involved. There's a bit more chance, I should say, instead of luck. But yeah, I mean, any save late in the game to preserve a win always feels good. Having those one special moment, like instead of making a ton of saves throughout the match, having kind of one at the end that sticks out is always a special moment for keepers. That's our rare moment to kind of be the hero on the day. So however it comes, we'll take it.
John Polskamp is our guest. So home opening match coming up on Saturday. The anticipation of finally getting back home to face off, and be in front of the home crowd on Saturday.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think I speak for the whole team when I say we're all extremely excited to be back at home. It's been a long time. It's been a while. So I'm sure the fans are excited. We're all excited for the fans to come out in force, and hopefully we give them a performance they're happy with, and we come away with the win.
John Polskamp is our guest. John, thank you for the time. I really appreciate it. Continue the success. 174 minutes and counting. The stoppage time, 15 saves as well. John, thank you for taking some time out today and joining us, and best of luck this weekend and as the season progresses. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on anytime.
Absolutely. There's John Polskamp joining us, Sporting KC goalkeeper. And, hey, let's against the Galaxy on Saturday, let's keep the clean sheet. Let's keep the goals continuing to not be scored and the saves by Polskamp. And see if Sporting can't get a goal or two themselves. And for me, saying today that Polito, yes, is, hopefully rounding into form and is there and can get out there and start playing, and then the goals will start coming for Sporting. But look, I know he says that it's, there are times when you look back and you feel like there are things that you could have taken advantage of, or if this was different, or if that was different, but it is a full season that it's got to be incredibly frustrating that you're the better side twice and, you've got 1 point. But it happens. It happens. And by the way, they would have 0 points if it wasn't for the night that Polskamp had as well. So, and we'll see with, Melia and what happens moving forward. And then even what happens with Polskamp and the national team with, the Olympic Games and other things and possibilities in front of John Polskamp. We'll certainly appreciate him joining us, the guy who's barely able to drink. So there you go. He's barely old enough to drink. Joining us. Josh Brisco was at Charlie Hustle today, joining us, and they've still got some cool stuff going on at Charlie Hustle. They've got their shirts, and they got the Big 12 shirts and everything, and certainly stuff to get ready for Sporting and the home opener. So a fun weekend ahead of us. We got the Big 12 tournament going on here in Kansas City. Saturday night, the Big 12 championship at T-Mobile. And Saturday night, the home opener for Sporting at 7:30. So Kansas City continues to be a hub of a lot of sports. Soccer capital of the world. I'll tell you where you can stick it. St. Louis trying to claim that. But the soccer capital of the world in Kansas City, and the home this week of the best conference tournament with the best conference in America. So not a bad place to be, Josh.
Just a little NFL draft around us out in a little bit.
Well, that
the World
too.
Cup around. It's just
the regional,
it's just a
regional
casual
final,
spring.
Yeah, just a regional final in a few weeks. A couple of weeks from this Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Just have that going for us as well.
It's an incredible time to be a Kansas City sports fan, but man, it would just be a terrible time to be an unfashionable Kansas City sports fan. I mean, my goodness, I just wish I could offer you something to help this problem, this issue you've had in your life. It's like you don't even know about Charlie Hustle, perhaps the location I'm broadcasting live from at the Plaza right now.
Well, what if they don't?
Then I can't help you. Look, if you can't find Charlie Hustle on your own, if you don't know that Charlie Hustle has launched a brand new collection of gear for this week for the Big 12 tournament, featuring KU basketball tees, some K-State basketball tees, and with the players on them, with the jackets, they got the hoodies. If you don't know all of that inherently at this point, that this is the home of the KC Heart t-shirts, they've got a billion different colors of all of those. They've got fleeces, hoodies, sweatshirts, jackets. If you don't know all of that about Charlie Hustle being here now again in this location in the Plaza where I'm broadcasting live from right now, I just don't know how I can tell you about it. I just don't know. I guess you're going to find out for yourself.
Beers, do you think he just did?
I can't. How could I possibly, Jason, in words, describe what it's like to be here at Charlie Hustle, surrounded by so many different pieces of meticulously folded art that you can then put on your torso and then represent your team out around this great city of ours? How could I possibly begin to put that feeling into words if you aren't here in person at this location that I have not disclosed?
Josh, did I see that you were wearing your Chiefs Super Bowl hoodie earlier on the video stream?
Yes, I did. So here's good news, bad news. So
I'm
good
not
news
wearing
is yes,
mine, unfortunately, so I can't pan over to me and show that we're doing the same thing. But I'm sorry.
Good, don't because you don't deserve it. Because I've got my Victory in the Desert hoodie, which I got the City of Champions one after the first Super Bowl, and it continues to be one of my absolute favorite hoodies. This one, though, with the cactus and the three rings on the different branches of the cactus arms is just like such good design, just immaculate. Plus, I'm a big Arizona sort of like imagery guy, as I've previously established. But I did get a little bit toasty in here because these hoodies will keep you so nice and warm. And so I took off my hoodie to reveal my Arrowhead collection piece, which you can buy right across the store here. I can see it on the shelf. I'm Charlie Hustle on Charlie Hustle. I'm peeling layers of Charlie Hustle. I'm like an ogre of Charlie Hustle because I have layers.
The quarterback conversation continues to go on.
Like an onion?
Just pull back this onion. That's what you want to do, or unfold the onion. That's what it was. The reporter talking to Steve Sarkisian at the Texas press conference as we unfold this onion. And
I forgot.
Also,
about
you, the extraordinary coach.
Oh man. Oh, okay. Hold on. We should talk about that. Actually, I'd rather do that than anything else.
An extraordinary coach like you, Steve, and you're the one. You are the one that is here to be able to do as we unfold this onion here.
Beards, is there? Speaking of things that I just don't know that exist, that I don't know that we can ever really summon. Is there a way to dictate to the world, the listening audience, theater of the mind, that there might be news that just sort of hit my feed that I think could be relevant today?
Yes,
probably. Would it sound like this?
Breaking news, Jason. The Buccaneers are releasing left tackle Donovan Smith. He's being cut today.
Yep. Moving Wirfs over to left tackle. And this goes back to our conversation we had about Frank Clark and Frank Clark being released and seeing some reaction of, ooh, okay, well, Frank Clark, you need a pass rusher. There you go. A premier edge rusher is now on the market since Frank Clark has been released by the Kansas City Chiefs. And those of us that have watched every single rep of Frank Clark would say, huh? Which the premier edge rusher is who? Look, I love Frank Clark. And, I'll have my memories of Frank Clark that'll always, be there in certain things. But we know he is not a premier edge rusher in the NFL. We know he is not somebody that is a difference maker to where if you need somebody to sack the quarterback and that's the last guy you need on your team, Frank Clark is going to be a nice complementary piece on your team. So we talked about that as sort of something to keep in mind when you see names come up because other fan bases and analysts talking about Frank Clark, and we go, no, not really, because Smith with the Bucs, there are a lot of Bucs fans that are like, about damn time. Oh, thank God. Okay, good. Oh, I was so worried they would have another year of him on this team. And if that's the reaction, I'm not sure the reaction in Kansas City should be, ooh, there's a tackle on the market. A left tackle is on the market that wasn't on the market earlier. Maybe that's something the Chiefs were thinking about. And you know what? Maybe it is. Maybe it goes to you sign a veteran guy that can maybe be a placeholder if you can't go out and get a top-level draft pick. Or if you do go get a top-level draft pick, then that placeholder could also then be a swing tackle if need be, if that guy is good enough to start from day one. But I would hope people wouldn't see that news and go, okay, there's the answer to the Chiefs not placing the franchise tag on Orlando Brown, because I like paying attention to the responses and reactions of that news from those that root for the Bucs, and most of it has been, oh, thank God.
Yeah, I think it's relevant for two reasons. One being that when you need something at any position, there being more people available to play that position is just going to be good for your spot in the market, right?
Point, yep.
I do not think Donovan Smith is going to be changing the market, but there's another guy out there, and right now, as I sit here today, and it's a little different from where I was at this time yesterday, and well, it's very different from this time yesterday. It was a little different from even the end of the show yesterday, and it might be different by the time free agency actually arrives. But if I'm under the impression that the Chiefs are going to try to find someone who has done it at an even passable NFL level, that you bring in that guy on the cheap, preferably on a one-year deal, and then you draft who you think the guy is going to be, that is your left tackle of the future, have a little training camp competition, may the best man win, and may Patrick Mahomes not get killed. Like that to me seems like the path that makes sense, and I'll take here's the thing. Mike Rimmers was really valuable for a good chunk of his time in Kansas City, and nobody had a nice thing to say about Mike Rimmers.
Yeah, that's true.
It is just about finding the bodies, and not even just like Andrew Wiley, as a developmental guy. Rimmers had gotten crushed for getting crushed in the Super Bowl, right? The second Giant Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And then, is that right? He's been in the league for a long time. That feels too long ago.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, he in the Chiefs-Buccaneers Super Bowl was a mess. But in the meantime, he was a really serviceable right tackle. And there's value in that. Obviously, we're talking about a left tackle, and we're even just trying to find a stopgap. But it's a complicated problem that's, I think, going to have complicated solutions.
So Tom Pelissero, puts out the tweet about the Bucs are releasing Donovan Smith. And then one of the responses is, hey, Bucs fans, is he any good? And then worst tackle to ever play the sport.
There you go.
He's a holding penalty waiting to happen. Another one says he's the best holder in the game.
Amazing.
Which is a great line.
Let me fix my own mistake here. He was in the Super Bowl for the Panthers, I think. The Panthers
that
Broncos Super
sense,
Bowl.
Yeah.
That must have been his timeline there. For Mike Rimmers, the guy who we weren't talking about until I decided to talk about him, and then got his career slightly wrong. I mean, perfect.
And there's a lot of thank God, oh dear God, thank you. It's about time. He's washed. So yeah, it's look, he's a name that's out there, and to your point, there's another name on the market. And I was thinking about this earlier as I was going through like different mock drafts and big boards that are out there, and starting to pay a little bit more attention to the tackle market now than I was before yesterday. At this time yesterday to now, I am paying a lot more attention to the tackle market in the draft. And looking at the different teams that may be looking for a tackle, the Raiders, the Titans, the Jets, the Pats, the Commanders, the Bengals, the Eagles, just different teams that may need or have a need for a left tackle. Well, if Orlando Brown is out there, it does then make it it does slide at least one team down the line that would maybe draft a tackle in the first round that signs Orlando Brown and then what would not be drafting that tackle. So maybe there's a decent chance that somebody then slides into the 20s that would have been gone at 18 or 19, and now he's at 23 or 24, and the Chiefs go, okay, it's worth it now. Let's go get this guy. That wouldn't be there if you were paying $20-some-odd million for Orlando Brown, and maybe that guy ends up being your left tackle of the future. It would be nice if, Raiders, Titans, Jets, Pats, Commanders, Bengals, Eagles, everybody else in the top 10 also found their left tackle of the future in this offseason before the draft. That'd be cool, too, before the draft.
Maybe they all discover that they already have their left tackle of the future on the
right.
roster. It was the friends we made along the way.
Every single one of them don't need it. But, everybody needs multiple things, right? You might be... Gosh, what are the...
Teicher told you he wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs went edge in the first round again. And I agree with him, except for now, it's like, well, hey, Adam, did you... I don't know if you saw. But right now, Prince Tega might be their left tackle.
Yeah,
I know it's Darian Kennard right now. This is not okay.
Yeah, the Darian Kennard at right. Well, Lucas Niang. Is it Niang? Is it Niang? It's Tooney?
It could be.
Tooney?
Yeah, right. It's a question mark. It is a hold right now. There's a pencil.
Right now, they just have the spoiled riches of guys they can just throw in there. But even if that's the case, even if these different teams need that, what if the Jets are sitting there? I think at number 13. It's like, oh, they need a left tackle, but they don't view Anton Harrison as a top 20 pick or Broderick Jones as a top 20 pick, right? Well, then are they going to take him at 13, or are they going to say, we're not going to reach on somebody 7 picks higher than we have him valued, right? How disciplined and principled are you to your draft board? Right? Like the Chiefs were disciplined and principled, and then they saw McDuffie there, and they're like, he shouldn't be there. So we've got to take advantage of a guy that in all of our draft exercises and our mock drafts, we didn't have McDuffie being there at 21. We've got to do something about this and move up and get him. Whereas if you're sitting there at number 13 or 14 and you go, yeah, we're not taking Broderick Jones or Anton Harrison or any of the other Joneses that are there, that, we'll take in somebody else. Okay, so then it starts to eliminate some teams that may need that guy. I don't know. It's just, there's so much more and a different conversation than I thought we'd be having right now, today, than yesterday at exactly this time. Because we were coming back to do Learn Funniest Best when the news broke in the break. And we're like, all right, well, no more. There's Learn Funniest Best. It's all about Orlando Brown not being franchise tagged. And I do think there's an element for me of, based off of the last couple of off seasons, and certainly last year, Josh, but there's certainly an element for me of, I trust in that there's plan A, B, C, and D in the front office with Brett Veach. And it's not going to be in a position to where they just simply go into the season and say, sorry, Patrick, figure it out, because we signed Brisco to play left tackle.
And I would take a pretty good market deal, I think. I wouldn't be able to provide much. I would spend... I would say everything from the first practice to presumably the Super Bowl parade, just in the rehab room.
Yeah.
Just getting treatment, because of whatever happened to me in the first day of practice. But I could be a really good parade guest. Like I feel I could pour a beer or catch a beer from the top or bottom of a double-decker bus. Yeah, I have value. It's just not where you'd expect.
Yeah, you spend the rest of the season recovering from the first rep you took in practice and the first day of training camp.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I'm making it. God, am I making it through the? I might make it to the first day of training camp. I'm definitely going down within that first day, no doubt. Probably in the conditioning drills and all of that.
Yeah, see,
I won't be making weight at any point as long as Andy Reid knows that.
even if you're talking about the padded practices coming in training camp, you still got soft tissue injuries to worry about during the OTAs and mini camps and things like that you're going to clearly suffer.
Is my doctors told me I have extra soft tissue, ultra soft, like a tissue. Yeah, exactly. It's I don't know, man. I wouldn't trust my ligaments on any field. Good, bad, George Toma, Ed Mangan, doesn't matter.
Yeah, and it's only 2-ply, which is really difficult.
Yeah,
for you.
Makes it really uncomfortable.
Yep. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back in this uncomfortable segment as Josh is hanging out at Charlie Hustle. We'll tell you more about
Nothing uncomfortable about Charlie Hustle.
No, there's nothing. It's the most comfortable thing ever.
I wish this segment would have been more like Charlie Hustle.
Well, so does Beards, and we would have just hustled to break 10 minutes ago.
Follow the show on Twitter at J810Anderson, at JB Brisco, at Beards McFly, and at Sports Radio 810. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Hardman, or as Booger would say, Hardiman, or because I like getting names pronounced correctly, by the way, so anybody that doesn't pronounce it correctly on my bleep list.
A few moments later.
Derek Robinson, things like that.
Who's Derek Robinson?
Is
he DeMarcus Robinson's brother?
Yeah, the Royals player, Derek Robinson, the old Royals player, Derek Robinson. Big fan of his.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 at WHB. 913-912-4810. Texas, Brett Veach is Bob Ross. I'm watching him make all these happy little trees, and I don't see the whole thing. And then, bam, at the end, I see this beautiful mountainscape with the goat in the back and the foreground, and I have no idea how I ever doubted he'd get me to that place.
That's an incredible reference.
I think that is a journey a lot of people went on last offseason. From Tyreek Hill to the... All right, well, what the hell is Brett Veach thinking? Okay, good luck. You're going to trade Tyreek Hill instead of paying him. And then they went, and all they did was win a Super Bowl. Another text comes in and says, I always wanted the show to talk more sporting soccer. Then I saw Jason in the media game last year. Yikes, I guess I'll take it sparingly now. Not sure what they're talking about.
Beards, do you remember? Sure. I just remember winning the media game. I just remember playing some
dominating.
Really vicious
I remember
defense. Dominating. Yeah, I remember getting 3 points in the media game.
I don't think it can be both. Like, I don't think you can say you dominated the media game, but then make fun of me for missing a wide open goal. I don't think that those things mesh.
Oh, is that what happened?
Well, we were in your
No,
head.
I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point.
If that were to
point.
happen,
No, you said.
If
that was really close to an admission. That's a good catch, Beards.
Oh, I know I missed the wide open goal. There was already an admission there. I've already apologized to Kent Swanson. This has already been litigated, okay? We have already, the jury has already found the verdict of me being guilty, all right? I'm Murdoch, all right? I'm Richard Murdoch here. I am guilty here. There is no doubt. And it didn't take 3 hours for them to come back.
You're not actually, because he did successfully fire a couple of shots.
Damn it. Yeah, that's true. And I just completely whiffed.
I should get to go home on that one.
I completely
go
whiffed.
home on that.
The Chiefs have made fun of the Broncos for years, and they've owned them every time. So,
Yeah, great point. That's a great point. Team Heartland owns Team Electric.
Yeah, which is perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. But I don't think the playing ability should have to equal the analyzing ability for you to do that.
Otherwise, none of us would have a job.
Yeah, that's right. I would only be able to analyze wide receivers and three-point shooters. That's it. Receivers and three-point shooters. That's it. Not saying I was good at those things, but just that would be where any reference point would come in.
I pretty much already only talk about fullbacks and long snappers, so it wouldn't really change my approach.
See, you discussing James Winchester. Let's really get into it. Let's break it down. What is he doing wrong, Josh? Where can they improve? There it is. Nothing.
Nothing.
Should the Chiefs examine moving on from Butker and saving $3 million?
I actually was looking at that a little bit. It's not a great savings, right?
No.
I feel like
just popped in my head as we were talking about a holder and a long snapper.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's $5 million against the cap this year for Butker.
Yeah, they could free up $3 million. It would be $2 million dead. I do think that's a question worth asking. I think the answer is nah, probably not. But it's an okay question. He quietly right now has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He has the 8th highest cap hit on the team at the moment. You've got 7 guys with double-digit cap hits. Mahomes close to 50. Frank Clark's, obviously, his will come off the books, but they're still there right now. Chris Jones is near 30, which could go down. Joe Tooney at 22. Travis Kelce at 15. Highway robbery and has been for his entire contract. And then Justin Reed at 12.7. MVS at 11. And then Butker at 5. If you want to have a conversation, by the way, about overpaid and underpaid players, and this is unfair to Joe Tooney. He did get compensated for being excellent and hitting free agency. I don't begrudge him that at all. This upcoming season, he's going to make $8 million more than Travis Kelce. He might be Joe Tooney's career earnings and Travis Kelce's career earnings, despite Tooney playing less, is going to be shocking. I'm on the trail here.
Okay, I was about to do the same thing. I'm like, oh, that's a great one. Let me go ahead and pull up the SPO track and see where those two guys are in their career earnings. Do you want to look up Kelsey or Tooney first?
I've got them both. I'm just trying to get them side by side.
I see.
Actually, the Travis Kelce one is just offensive because he's going to retire the greatest tight end of all time, and if he continues out his current contract, he will make a little over $100 million in salary over the life of his deal. So $107 million if he just plays through 2025, his current deal, and then retires after that. That's unlikely, but whatever.
Poor guy.
If Joe Tooney plays out the rest of his deal through 2025, he would be at $99,991,000.
Tooney, $100 million?
Through 7 years, so this is including rookie deals here too, right? Through 7 seasons, Joe Tooney made $52.5 million. Travis Kelce, through 10, has made a little under $65 million. Joe Tooney's probably going to have higher career earnings than Travis Kelce.
Yeah. He'd be able to play longer.
It's about hitting free agency, man. I mean, that's where it – because the Patriots either tagged him or he wouldn't have had a 5th-year option. He was a 3rd rounder. So they tagged him in 2020 before he hit free agency, I believe, and then the Chiefs gave him a big deal. So good few years there for Mr. Tooney.
But it's also a credit to Travis Kelce because Kelce could be demanding the most money of a tight end every single year. Every single year you can say, I'm going to hold out because I want the most money of a tight end. And he's restructured sometimes. He's given a team-friendly deal. So I think it's also a credit to what Travis Kelce has done. And he's made $65 million in his career, so there's nothing wrong with that. And look, I brought this up with Adam Teicher when we were talking about Frank Clark. In fact, can we play the Frank Clark clip from on the field with James Palmer? This is after the Titans AFC Championship game. And this is essentially how I remember. If Frank Clark's time in his Kansas City is over, this is how I remember Frank Clark.
Last 2 games, each game, 70 yards, over 200 yards each game. I know damn well we wasn't going to win the game if we let that happen. They come in here, he ran for 70 yards. They call him the best rusher in the league. We sit in this home early.
I posted the comments that you said to me, and all over social media, everybody said you better watch your back, that you're saying things that you can't cash.
Ooh.
Everybody on social media saying.
They must not know who I am yet. They going to find out sooner or later when I got that ring on my finger. At the end of the day, we champions. AFC, that trophy that got my own the last name on it, that the KC. That KC. Ain't no fall off. Last year, jump off sides, all that. I told him when I got here, the gonna change. Look at the we the best world.
Go Joy.
I just love that. I mean, it's one of the best on-field interviews maybe ever, certainly in a Chiefs uniform, of Frank Clark. He went at Derrick Henry. He talked about anybody that doubted him. He talked about winning the Lamar Hunt Trophy. He threw Dee Ford under the bus, just a year later. I mean, he laid it all out on the line, and it was just dynamite. And I love when James Palmer says, I put it on social media and people are saying you better watch your back, that your mouth's writing checks. Who? Not me, Frank. Not me. I'm saying other people. Just so we're aware, Frank, I am not saying me. I put it on social media. They said those things. Who? Not me. I didn't do it, Frank. It was not me. But I do wonder, Frank Clark restructured his deal last year so he could stay in Kansas City because he wanted to stay in Kansas City. And he got
also
another.
Benefited everybody. It was beneficial for all parties.
Absolutely. And so I don't know if how viable that was this year. We don't know what the conversations were like going on with the Chiefs and Frank Clark's representatives. Okay, so maybe the Chiefs talked with him and just said, "Hey, look, it's not going to work. We're just going to release you, and best of luck." Or it might have been, "Here's the number," and they said, "We think we can get more," and the Chiefs said, "You know what? More power to you. Best of luck, man." And I do wonder, if you're Frank Clark, the value that starts to come in. I don't know what makes him tick, and I don't know what makes anybody else tick. But he's made $87 million in his career. Is it worth it to go to Detroit to make $5 million, or to stay in Kansas City and make $2 million or something like that? You know what I mean? Is that $3 million worth it to go to Detroit for a year or somewhere else for a year? And I know he's already changed teams, and when people start to have families, things start to get different a little bit. But when he went from Seattle to KC, his kids weren't in school at that time. It's a little easier to uproot and move, But then they start to develop friends and relationships, and they get in their routine. It's a little difficult to then go, well, let's move somewhere for a year, and then let's move somewhere else for a year, and then move somewhere else for a year, as opposed to, nah, I don't think the extra money is really worth it there because I've already made 90 in my career. Like, I don't know. Who knows? Yeah. But again, I'm throwing out the possibility that the Chiefs might have just said, I'm sorry, Frank, we're just, we've looked at the boat, which is not going to work. So.
I think, first of all, like them cutting him is that was in all likelihood going to have to be the first step, even if they were going to be able to get him back. I mean, they could have figured it out to avoid the terminology, but the money that was on the books this year was not movable in the way that last year's was a little bit. We've heard a few guys in the post-playing career kind of talk about that, that there is you just have more that goes into your math of your making your free agency decisions and all of that. So for Clark here, I think it makes all the sense in the world to say, hey, just let me hit the open market and we'll see where it ends up.
Yeah.
What I keep wondering, though, is if he really is going to either demand a second year on his deal that's not totally funny money, that has at least a little bit guaranteed, or if he ends up in a situation where he's just on a one-year deal getting offered $4 or $5 million more than a Melvin Ingram or a Carlos Dunlap is being offered, I'd rather have those guys in the money. Yeah. I might rather have those guys if the money was even. I mean, and again, the playoff Frank Clark thing is like a whole other immeasurable part of this that I have just given up hope of ever understanding. But in terms of like their play over the last couple of years altogether, you take those guys, and there are going to be more of those 1 year older edge rushers who are there to be mercenaries, the Justin Houstons and all of that. There are going to be new guys hitting that market also, where it's not always going to be the same 31, 32-year-olds. It'll be different 30, 31, 32-year-olds. And I fully expect the Chiefs to sign at least one of those type of guys. I thought it could have been Frank Clark. I will be really curious to see what his best offers end up being.
I mean, what's more head-scratching in that Frank Clark has 13.5 sacks in the playoffs, and he has 23.5 in the regular season for the Chiefs in 4 years. So only 10 more sacks in all those games that he has played in the 4 years. Or, we talk about championships, or the fact that the Royals won a World Series with Alcides Escobar leading off. Like, which one sort of causes your motor neurons to just sort of go haywire and get crossed and start sparking? Like, I don't get it.
Well, I accepted pretty early on that Esky was a key ingredient in the Royals' devil magic, so I don't have as much cognitive dissonance there, because I just, like, somewhere in there was like, well, he's the first ingredient, and if you don't put him into the big pot first, it's not going to turn out right, so you start with Esky. I accepted that one a lot earlier. The Frank Clark stats are absolutely bonkers.
58 games, 23.5. 12 games.
Not counting the games he didn't play in, right? Which is a whole other category.
For the Chiefs, 12 games, 10.5 for him. I mean,
why don't we just tell him that every game's a playoff game?
Every 12. I mean, he's getting almost a sack per game in his playoff career with the Chiefs. I mean, that's 36 games. He would have, 32 sacks. And in 58 regular season games, he's had 23. Like, it's just, I don't know. My eyes have gone cross. Falls down a well that goes uncrossed. I don't know. You tell me. I'm not sure. But the cognitive dissonance, yes, there's that part of it. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We continue rolling as we wrap up the show. Coming up next is Josh still hanging out at Charlie Hustle on the Plaza. More Zone next.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com, in the 810 mobile app, or by subscribing to The Zone wherever you get your podcasts. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Brian, you're the man as always, sir. Love hearing your voice and looking forward to catching up on Saturday.
You love hearing my voice because it sounds so much like your voice.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
God, that's such a great line by Haney. Can't even hate it. Such a great line.
All-time great.
God, so good. 913-912-4810 text says, Kelsey has Cobra Kai 5 money on the horizon, guys. That is true.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
a good point.
He's going to be fine. I'm not saying you should feel bad for Travis Kelsey. I'm just saying that somehow he's been underpaid.
Do you think he'll be able to find a place to eat when he's only made $65 million in his career? Will he be able to feed his kids? You know, I got to feed my kids, too. What, gold nuggets? What are you feeding your children? That's bad for their teeth. Championship week continues rolling. Live coverage of the Big 12 tournament brought to you by Barstool Sportsbook inside Hollywood Casino, Greenlight Dispensary, Jay Rieger and Company, CBD American Shaman, and Miller Lite. Coming up tonight, Sporting KC show at 7 o'clock, and then the West Coast Conference Championship, Gonzaga and St. Mary's. And Josh, Charlie Hustle, what?
We're going to be shooting T-shirts out of a cannon during the Big 12 tournament out there at P&L. But come on by, Charlie Hustle. You know them. You love them already. But, boy, it has been awesome to get to keep an eye on all these awesome designs they've been restocking all day long. I finally got my little selection here. I'm leaving a better-dressed man.
About damn time. All right, that's it for us. We will step aside. The program comes up next.
Your exclusive home